So why don't we begin? Good evening. It's 7:10 on Tuesday, September 11th, 2018, calling to order the school committee at the Parkhurst School. A quick rundown of our agenda tonight. We'll have public comment, student report from our high school representative. Nate Burns is back with us again this year, so we're excited to see him. Under reports and discussion items, we have an introduction of two new staff members, Mr. Lynn at the McCall Middle School and Mr. Levine as our Administrator of Counseling, Health, and Wellness. Ms. Kirby will give us a personnel report and an update on hiring. Mr. Arias, our Athletic Director, here tonight for a spring athletics report and an update on fundraising and Booster Club. And Ellen has prepared, I think, some Munis runs for us to understand the financing or the costs on the athletic side as well. We have a report on the Parkhurst and Mystic elevators, the progress on that design exercise tonight. The policy subcommittee has been busy. We have tonight a first reading of some revised policies that are presented before you tonight in the agenda. Under E and F, we have three action items that were on the agenda tonight. One we are not going to be acting on tonight, but we still have a pretty fulsome update for you all, and that is the solar PPA, power purchase agreement for VO and the high school. We are still not quite ready for a vote on the Vincent Owen, but a lot of good work has been done, so we look forward to sharing that with you tonight. But we do have a gift from John and Mary Murphy Foundation to accept and some minutes to approve. Chair report, Judy has a report, and we'll go over future agenda items. Our next meeting dates are September 25th and October 9th. So, having done a run through, before we turn to Nate, is there anyone here for public comment tonight who'd like to share anything with the school committee? Going once, going twice. So, moving on. Nate, why don't you come join us? Did you have a good summer?
I did.
Good.
Tried to.
Welcome. It's good to see you again.
You too.
What's going on at the high school?
Not much within our first week, but it was definitely a very smooth start. So I'd like to just start off again with an introduction of myself. My name is Nate Burns. I am the president of Student Council this year. I'll also be serving as the student liaison to the school committee. Within the next few weeks, we'll have elections for another seat to come help me represent ourselves to the school committee. And hopefully they'll be joining me pretty soon within the next 2 weeks. Like I said, school opening was really smooth. Everyone's enjoying the later start time, and although I don't have too much information about student views on that yet because we haven't had our first student council meeting, I'll definitely be able to answer more questions at a later time. Mm-hmm. On the athletic fields, we've definitely been doing well. Football just won their first home opener, 26-21. We all really appreciate the lights, so thank you again. And girls volleyball beat Watertown on Friday. Boys soccer won their home opener versus Wakefield, and girls soccer beat Wakefield 5-0. The PSAT at the high school will be Saturday, October 13th, and that's something that all juniors are encouraged to participate in, and any sophomores that are willing to do it. Win block, we have our first win block tomorrow, and although this one will be used for class meetings to get all that information squared away, the next real win block will be next week, and starting this year, new to the win block, colleges will be hosting their visits during the win block, so seniors can go to college information sessions during that win block. I want to take a moment just to note that all the students' thoughts and prayers are with George Gilmer, and a page has been set up on Caring Bridge, so updates can be seen through that if you search his name. Students at WHS are writing cards of encouragement and support, and that's about all I have. So if there's any questions, I know I'd love to hang around for a little bit. But
anybody have anything for Nate? So we look forward to seeing you next time, and you'll have more for us then.
I will.
Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Sure. Do you mind if I hang around for a little
Absolutely.
bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hang out. We may have to share the mic a little bit, but we're always happy to have you join us. Okay, thank you. So reports and discussion items. Judy, you want to kick this off?
I'd be delighted. So we hired some time ago 2 great new members of our administrative team, and I asked them to come tonight to introduce themselves to you. You have met them tonight or may have met them through the hiring process. but I wanted to have them introduce themselves to the wider community on camera so that folks could put a name to a face. So why don't we start with Jason? No, James is first, I guess. James Lynn, new principal of McCall Middle School. And I've asked them just to talk briefly about themselves, their experiences, and how their transition has been so far.
Thank you. My name is James Lind. This is my first year, obviously, at McCall Middle School. Prior to this, I served 3 years as the principal at Groton Dunstable Regional Middle School at Groton. And before that, 6 years as assistant principal in Concord Middle School. Fantastic first week. It was a little bit warm, but I think it really shows the resiliencies of our students and our staff. We're able to power through some pretty steamy weather, but again, it looks like a lot of kids had a lot of fun. I think kids enjoy coming back to school to see their friends again. The sixth graders, we're still working on them to try to settle in. It is a very big building. It's a big transition, so it takes a while, but we take one step at a time. And I think the 7th and 8th graders are pretty much settled back in. I think they enjoy being the big kids of the school. So certainly love to see everybody in that role. I think I'm looking forward to a great school year. I think we just talked about students' wellness, so that will be a focus on my staff and also myself. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody on this very important topic.
So just to make sure that, remind people that James also has a new assistant principal, Terry Sheehan, and so he started off to a good start as well. Do you want to talk briefly about the new spaces downstairs and how those are working out?
Absolutely. 3 brand new spaces down by where the youth center used to be. Certainly, because of the hot weather, it was everybody's very jealous of those 3 rooms. Those are air conditioned. We're still working on completing the connector. And so right now, some of the students do have to travel quite a little bit to go around the circle to be able to get back to the other part of the building. But as soon as the connector is completed, that transition should be much smoother. Let's see, the outdoor space is coming along very nicely. Right before the school year started, the bamboos were planted, and you haven't had a chance to come by. It's quite a beautiful area, so I'm looking forward to that space being completed, and kids and staff were able to go outside and enjoy the outdoors and get some fresh air.
So Judy, question for you. I actually met James a couple of times this summer in his running shoes, keeping an eye on the Phase 1 work that was going on there. Will James have an opportunity to, as we continue to work on Phase 2, to maybe plug in with the EFPBC to just monitor that as kind of the building-based administrator and kind of keep on top of how that's going as well?
Sure. There's a weekly construction meeting, so James, Ellen, and some members of the EFPBC attend, and so the building principal always plays a large role in those weekly construction meetings once the construction is started. Phase 2 is a longer-term project that's going to go over 2 years, mainly in the summer, very heavy work in the summer. And so once we have the job bid and we're able to put the pieces together, I think James will play a big role. Also, the architect said at the last EFPBC meeting that he'd like to have another educational planning meeting just to make sure that the spaces are configured exactly to our specifications in terms of the learning needs. And so you weren't around when we originally planned them, so this would be a good time to jump in and just verify now that the 60% drawings are done. And so I expect James will be really intimately involved, as he has been with Phase 1.
James, you don't have to leave. Nate, I'm going to ask you just move one over to your left if you don't mind, and then we could introduce Jason. That'd be okay? Come on up.
You didn't have to go.
Want me to keep you company?
Yeah.
Teamwork.
How you doing?
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have had the opportunity to meet many of you. I'm Jason Levine. I have spent, before my time in Winchester, I've spent the last 14 years as a practicing school psychologist, the last 12 years in Wakefield. And the last 5 of those 12 years also serving as their coordinator of social, emotional, and behavioral health services. So I I'm here in Winchester and very excited to really be beginning some great work with a lot of skilled clinicians and great administrative team to support me in the transition.
So Judy, could you maybe just talk a bit about how this role, how he spends his time, whether here at Parkhurst, out in the schools, and working with other members of the leadership team?
Sure. You might recall this as a position we added a couple of years ago, and as we reconfigured the departments of counseling, health, and wellness, which fell under PE to some extent, and really we thought it would be helpful to have some coordination of both clinical services, school psychologists, counselors, school adjustment counselors, social workers, but also someone who connected that to the teachers who teach health and wellness, PE, health and wellness, the nurses, and also interacted with our incident management team, which there's a district-wide team and then there's a building-based team. So one of the strengths that Jason brings is crisis or grief intervention response, and has worked pretty extensively with NEMLEC STARS in order to make sure we're prepared. And so I think this position is really a critically important one that connects lots of people in ways that they weren't connected in the past, both in a proactive sense and a reactive sense. If something happens, to be prepared to plan for that and manage it and react to it and handle it appropriately, but also a proactive sense to make sure that we're focused not just on treating the symptoms of mental illness or stress and anxiety, but also to very actively prevent those things from becoming problems in our students. And so this is a kind of a unique position. So Jason works as a central office administrator, serves on the central office team, interacts with all of the principals, but also works extensively with special education, with the school psychologists, with the other clinicians, with the IMT teams, and so he wears a lot of hats.
That I do.
Did I forget anything?
No.
He would never admit there's more that I forgot to say. So.
Jason, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a
I'm
question?
very excited to be here.
Sure, go ahead, Zena.
Is Jason expected to also work on our sexual education program?
So as part of we have a district goal around updating our wellness curriculum, and part of that effort, Jason is helping to lead the curriculum review in wellness, right?
Yes.
And that's sexual education, sexuality, gender issues, all embedded in there.
Under, I believe, the auspices of human growth and development.
Human growth and development. Thank you. I knew it had an overarching
He was working
umbrella
on
term.
it this week.
Yes.
I'm not going to ask how you know that.
I just want to thank you. Want to thank you both for your time tonight in our sort of pre-meeting, and it was good to hear your insight on our district goals and for you to meet the rest of the school committee. It's exciting that you're here with us, and we look forward to a lot of success this school year and beyond. So, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure
Thank
to
you
meet
for having
you.
us.
I just want to dispel a rumor about Principal Lynn. I did not hire him because his last name is the exact same name as my daughter's first name. But it's just a lovely coincidence.
I was misled.
Great.
So, thank you so much.
James, Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Happy to have you. So, Judy, we have a personnel report and update from Ms. Kirby.
Ms. Kirby, do you have any voice left?
I do. Of course I do. My children are at home to enjoy this.
Nate, I didn't mean to push you to the margins. I was just trying to make room for the two of them. So if you want to move over, feel free. Don't take it personally. Hi, Ms. Kirby. How are you?
Great. So since our last chat about personnel at the end of July, the HR office continues to be a hub of activity, and I would be remiss if I did not give a huge shout out to Diane McRoby, who, if you walk by her office now, is in there processing all of the paperwork that goes into hiring many new staff members. And Frida has been instrumental this spring in helping out our department as well, and as a result of their work on top of the work of the hiring teams in the schools, I am thrilled to say that every classroom has a teacher, every office has an admin assistant, and there are nurses in all the buildings. There's been a tremendous amount of hiring. In total, we've had 37 teachers, 6 new administrators we've welcomed, and within these numbers, please understand that there was movement, among buildings. It has been incredible to see this year the number of TA turnover, and it really has happened within the last 2 or 3 weeks. And again, I commend especially the middle school, who had a tremendous amount of turnover, and all of it was for good news. We are fortunate. We hire TAs who have teaching certificates, and they get a full-time position, and they're off to their next great adventure in their career. But James and his team has been awesome, and really going through the resumes and, again, getting very highly qualified staff to work with our students.
Can I just interject with a quick question?
Sure.
We know a lot of our TAs, this is a first step in their career in education, and they're really looking for a gig somewhere as a teacher. So when you talk about a lot of this being last minute, is that in large part due to some TAs who just got an offer at a district and they're ready for that next step?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, and I would say that's 90% of the TAs, especially in the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
Right. Sometimes they get a long-term sub gig for someone who's going on maternity leave, or someone who's unexpectedly ill, and that's a higher salary, that's a teaching position, so they can gain some experience.
It's a good opportunity for them.
It's a great opportunity.
No
It's a
doubt.
great opportunity.
Thank you, sorry.
No, please. And already we know of 2 retirees. One will happen at the end of December and one at the end of the year. And we've had 2 resignations, and again, we're on that. The hiring team at Morocco is presently looking for a library media specialist. That position will be open beginning October, and then we had another TA that resigned over at the middle school. So they're on top of that and doing what they need to. And I have to say, Dennis and his group at the high school have been faced with many challenges. We're a big district, and life happens. And he, along with his staff, have really worked together to make sure the kids have what they need until they're able to get someone in place. They have hiring teams going, but the community at the high school are working together, again, to meet the kids' needs. So very busy time, but it's nice to see what we know to be true about Winchester. We are a community, we are here for our kids, and people, when push comes to shove, will do whatever it takes to make sure they get what they need. So I appreciate everyone's work, because it truly is a team effort. And just to let you know, just give you an update, we had a great opening day with our new teachers a couple of weeks ago. And again, a tremendous shout out to our lead mentors. We have first year lead mentors, and we have second year lead mentors. Chrissy Fagner and Melissa Tester are at the elementary level. Peggy Walker is at the middle school, and Sandy Manugian at the high school. Really worked with the directors, worked with the principals to make sure that our new staff has a mentor that's going to give them what they need so they can be successful into their transition here in Winchester. And our second year group of teachers will be meeting, and the lead mentors at the elementary level are Ella McLeod Adams, or Ella Adams McLeod, thank you, and Julie McElhaney Gorman are at the elementary. Kim Burke is the second year lead mentor, and Gail Simeone at the high school. And this program in second year is very different from the first year. It's really focused on good pedagogy and practices. And the great news is we have teachers who are eager and willing to share their expertise, so it's really very much a workshop model for second-year teachers, and it's based on what it is they believe they need so that they can go to their next level for professional growth. So all of the mentors and proteges will be meeting for their first official time next Tuesday, and they meet once a month, and it varies depending on your license, the number of years experience. But again, I can't think of a better group of teachers to lead our new staff. So it's exciting to be part of that as well. And we're looking to train those people that are new to mentoring, and also those who are new to evaluating teachers, so that we're talking the same. We'll be doing walkthroughs together. And next week, I'll be meeting with that group that's just come on board, so that they're comfortable moving into the evaluation supervision season. Anyone have any questions?
I have one for you and for Jen. So for these last minute, because we did have some resignations, like literally as school was starting. So for those last minute hires, when we're onboarding these people, we don't have the benefit of summer and PD. Just reassure us how it works. We throw them in a classroom on
we
the next
say,
day
"Good
and
luck."
say, "Figure it out. Good luck." How do we?
Here are a couple chairs, wave a flag.
How do we catch up?
Lots of coffee.
Again, you would just, you already know, but to just see it in action, it's hard to describe. They become very much part of the community on day one. So they know they have a good support here. They reach out, ask questions to whomever, and they know that we're here in any capacity. But more importantly, at the school level, they're assigned a mentor right away.
Okay.
The principals or the directors or just the whole group together are working to make sure, again, that they have what they need. And that could be just the bathrooms are down the hall and the cafeteria is there, and it's, so we think about the logistics, but then that bigger picture of content and making sure they have what they need to give the kids that social and academic.
Great.
And there are required workshops throughout the year for new teachers in addition to the monthly mentoring meetings, and so people can take them there's a lot of flexibility depending on their background and experience. They can sign up for classes that they feel they need at the time that they need it. And I think Jen does an amazing job offering multiple sections at multiple times of all of our grad courses and workshops, or as many as possible. And I sometimes say to her, "Oh, you're running this again. Can't you kind of combine some of these classes?" And she said, "Well, these 4 people can only do it at night, and these people," and so she's incredibly flexible. And I think that really helps reduce the anxiety of new teachers because they can fit it in where it works best for them.
Yeah, and I just want to as we're giving shout outs, give a quick shout out to all the people that make those pieces happen too. And so great, and a shout out to the school committee for some of our elementary leadership pieces we have now, because very quickly when we get a last minute, like at the secondary level, we've always had the curriculum and the directors to quickly swoop in on those pieces. And at the elementary, while principals are trying to open buildings, it was really up to the principals before. But now that we have our STEM person and our literacy person, they immediately go in and start working with them on those pieces. So, and then this year, with our replacement for the social emotional, kind of the coaching position too, she's been right in helping with new people too. So it's been great.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions for Lori? Thank you, Lori, for the update.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Okay, so next up is Mark Aria, our athletic director. Can you join us up here? Welcome, Mark. So we did have this on an agenda for the school committee, I think, meeting before last. Didn't have the benefit of having Ellen with us for some of the Munis reports, so what you've got in front of you tonight is kind of mirrors the detail we've had in the past. You've got a summary sheet that I think Mark prepares just in terms of numbers and participation, and then we have the financials that back it up. Open it up to you, Judy or Mark, for any introductory comments.
Sure. So I would first like to congratulate Mark for working closely with the folks who donated and installed the lights. We had a great, and several school committee members were there, a great event. To see football under the lights was kind of magical. And
Right, yeah.
I was really pleased with how that went. Mark is here to talk about a couple of things tonight. One is, this is the spring athletics report and the financials are for the spring athletics program. After Ellen does her end-of-year report, we can do because it's a revolving account and not everything had been closed out, she can do a report for the previous year athletic program for the whole year, although it's still a revolving account. Essentially, no, it doesn't have a year end per se in the same way. So she can answer questions about that. Mark and I have had a lot of conversations about boosters, and I know he's here tonight to talk about boosters a little bit. It's always a tricky issue because the boosters are outside folks who are whose only purpose is to support our athletic program, and so Mark will talk about his relationship with the boosters and what kind of guidelines he gives them. But in general, I still think we are the school in the league in the area with the greatest number of sports teams, and Mark has managed that very ably. And so I think we can all be really proud of the postseason competition, but also the work that he's done with leadership in terms of supporting student athletes to grow as individual performers, but as people with character in the community as well, and that's as important as the stats that you see here. So Mark is not going to brag about any of our many accomplishments, but I just wanted to say that all of us really appreciate that leadership that you've shown in that area. So
thank you.
Toss it to you.
So quickly about the spring report, just so I can read it out loud for the people that don't have sheets in front of them. This spring we had 482 student athletes competing in 12 different sports and covering 23 teams at various levels, varsity, JV, freshman. We had 7 teams qualify for postseason competition, 2 of which were league champions, boys lacrosse and girls tennis. We had boys lacrosse make the D2 North final. Boys tennis won the Division II state championship, which was great. Girls tennis were actually, it was a great day because girls and boys tennis were playing back-to-back for state championships at Newton South. Unfortunately, the girls didn't, come out victorious, but they still played great. So they were D2 state finalists. The boys did win over Duxbury. That was awesome. Sailing, boys volleyball was a D1 North quarterfinalist. Lost to the team that ended up going on to the state final in the last set. It was a great game. And ultimate frisbee. 1 student athlete was recognized as a Globe and Herald All-Scholastic. We had 29 league all-stars, and 1 student was recognized as the Middlesex League MVP. And also, not on the sheet, but found out recently, it's not finalized yet, but every year the Boston Globe does different divisions. So there's like a Dalton Trophy and Ames Trophy. Dalton would be for the Division I school in the state with the best overall winning percentage. Ames is the Division II, and right now we're in the top 5. They haven't finalized that yet, but for Division II schools, we're in the top 5 overall athletic program in the state in terms of winning percentage as a program. So that was pretty impressive.
Is that for the whole year?
That's for the whole year, yeah. So fall, winter, spring, which is great. So we're off to a good fall, as smooth as can be expected with the new field and lights and trying to time change and adjust schedules accordingly. And with the lights not being online at Skilling's, rearranging schedules to try to make everything work. And we've had coaches that have been very flexible and very accommodating in terms of working around that, which is great because we had gone in expecting a certain, lights to be on and they're not on, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just a scheduling thing with Eversource apparently. So we're getting there and we'll work through it, and it's working out.
Do you want Ellen to summarize the financials, or before you take questions?
I was actually just going to ask you to comment on the last comment Mark made, but I'll save it until we get into discussion. So, yeah, Ellen, take it away.
Just a brief summary. We took in for user fees for the spring season, $142,055, and we took in $134,827 in user fees, and we did expend $185,682 in expenses. So we did run a deficit for the spring season of $50,855. Looking at where things were landing with the athletic revolving account, we had savings as well as increased user fee revenue from other seasons, offset that. So we did land in the school year, in a positive areas with the athletic development account.
So the spring is typically the smallest participation, smallest number of athletes, or which season is the?
I could speak to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
User fees, because so many of our students play multiple seasons and do meet caps. We tend to bring in, spring seasons tend to bring in the least amount in revenue.
Because of the family
for
cap,
for
yeah.
the family cap for the user fees. So we definitely, this is a trend that that I've seen before.
Mhm.
And I'm comfortable with, Mark definitely looks at his budget and makes sure that he's living within his budget lines always. And that's, I will say, with working, just finishing our first year together, Mark very has a strong grasp of his budget.
So, before I open it up to questions, do you have some thoughts or did you have some remarks you wanted to share about fundraising and booster clubs, which has kind of been an ongoing conversation, source of questions over the past 3 or 4 years, sometimes focused maybe on more sports than others. I think there are some members here who have some questions for you about it, but can you share with us how that relationship works today?
Sure. So basically what happens when a team wants, what we try to do is when a team wants to do a fundraiser, the coach of that program will speak to their booster, clubs. They'll have to get it approved through myself and through Dennis with a, fundraising request form. They fill out what the fundraiser will be, the purpose of the fundraiser, and they'll submit it. Dennis and I will review it. We'll let them know if it's approved or not. They go through with it. There's obviously standards that, Dennis and I follow in terms of approving or not approving a fundraiser. One being there's no incentivized fundraising for students. I know we had issues with that before I got here in the past with kids receiving, whether it be gear or money for participating in a fundraiser. Another being that we try to limit certain fundraisers to one team a season. So if a certain team is doing a certain fundraiser, we don't allow multiple teams to do that fundraiser because, we don't want the same people getting reached in the same exact way.
Yep.
The one we allow people to do because it's been successful and people don't seem to mind it really, in all truth, is dump runs. And it provides a service to the people in town that don't get that service. So people seem to like the dump run. So it can bring in brings in a decent amount of money for programs. And I think people expect it, which is half the battle. So that's another major component. The other is no door-to-door solicitations. And by, I don't know if anyone knows this, but the town hall reached out. Now all dump run fundraisers need to be approved through town hall as well, and any food concession stands at athletic events need to be approved through town hall as well. So
Okay.
different codes and sanitation.
And so when, just a couple of very basic questions that I want to open up to the committee. When booster clubs are raising money, those dollars go where? To an account that's controlled by whom? Who does that accounting? Who oversees it?
So the booster club for that, I know a lot, like, for instance, the football team, they have their own, football boosters
Yep.
have their own, nonprofit that they raise money into that account. So they're in control of that account.
And then how might you describe, again, this would be easier if I was throwing different sports at you, but in the broadest way, if there's an understanding that there are certain things in athletics that we sort of feel ideologically are a part of our, I'll call it foundation budget, if I can steal that expression for the purpose of athletics. So like we should provide baseballs to the baseball team.
Sure.
We should provide ice to the hockey team. Broadly, what kinds of things do you get requests for booster clubs that you and Dennis look at, maybe discuss with Judy and say, yeah, we support that? They fund what kind of purchases generally?
So, and what I always like to say is what they want, not what they need, right? So what do they want as a as a program, not necessarily what they need. They need baseballs. They need ice. They need,
And need is on us.
That's on
Yeah.
us, and we've always said that since I've been here.
Yeah.
So things like team gear, sweatshirts and sweatpants that they wear to away games or things like that. Team banquets for the end of the year. Video systems that they use for, taping games, sharing with opponents, making highlight films for kids who want to go play at the next level. So those programs cost a decent amount of money now. So those are the types of things that Dennis and I look at and say, this is okay to fundraise for, and we'll approve it. If there's an item on that list that we don't think should be fundraised for, or, according to the rules that we have, we don't approve it.
Right.
So
then going back to, was it 5-6 years ago, Susan, we tried to reconcile, we called it at the time, a structural deficit in our athletics funding. We worked with the Winchester Sports Foundation. In year one, it was just $10,000. It was more meaningful in year two and year three. They brought you a big check for $50,000 or $60,000, and the understanding at the school committee at the time was we were accepting a gift and we were matching it so that we would try to keep pace with, I like the way you said it, what they need. That we would either have in our budget or through fees, right, for athletics participation. And then I think subsequent to that, I came to understand, and I think you've shared this was the case when you got here, that football's a little different because the nature of the sport, I gather we have some coaches that are paid for through a separate funding source. Is that right? Do boosters clubs sort of supplement the extra coaches that we need for football?
So that has happened in the past.
Okay.
This year what has happened is 2 coaches stepped down from the program that were paid in the past,
Okay.
and two of the volunteer paid assistants that had been volunteering with the program that were paid assistants in the past moved into the actual paid by the school.
The district?
And,
Okay.
By the district. And now it's just volunteers. So we're not paying anybody through boosters on the football staff.
So that, and then is that the case for the other sports? That
It's
we're
the case
not-
for
we
the
should-
others.
We should not be using booster club dollars to
Correct.
pay for coaches.
Correct.
And if we hear that is happening, we take that to whom? How do we run that to ground? Is that a conversation with Mark? Is that a conversation with Judy?
So volunteer coaches have to pass a Corey check and are vetted just like everyone else.
Yep. So sorry to interrupt. Every coach that helps out, volunteer, even if they come in for 2 days, they all go through the same process as a head coach would. So they all have to meet all the standards according to state law. They have to be CPR certified. They go through the Corey check. They're fingerprinted. And I think we send enough people to you that you know that already. So everyone goes through that process, and they take the mandatory concussion testing. They
Yep.
register. They do all the things that a head coach does here.
Yep.
So anyone that helps out at all goes through the process that we have that we've set up in town that everyone
Yep.
else should go to. All our full-time employees go through.
Okay.
So I don't think there's an issue there, right now I don't see an issue with anyone getting paid through boosters.
Okay.
So
If they are, we don't know about it.
yeah, exactly. If they are, it's news to me, honestly. So
So I want to come back to that because I don't want to monopolize it, but because that's an important piece. But I also just want to open it up to other questions, not just on this topic, but at the end of each season, Mark does come with the summary. The financials are really helpful. I don't know how much time you guys have had to study it, but the participation numbers look pretty good. I know there have been questions in the past about is there a concern when we have a sport where maybe in the past we fielded a JV team, but in one year we didn't? Where did those kids go? You've said in the past you encourage them to do maybe track and field. Is there a consequence for that? Track and field's like the United Nations of athletics program. They'll take everybody.
Track is the best sport. I used to coach
I know
track
you are.
and
I know.
field.
I knew I was going to get a reaction. I'm not putting it down.
It's not. It should be the first choice.
I'm not putting it down, but this has come up before, and I know folks have at the time at this table said, well, if track and field is going to swell to some number of kids, do we need to direct more resources to track and field? So how do we keep pace with a growing district where we're hiring more teachers and TAs and we're building space? Are we keeping pace with athletics? Because when we made that structural change, Mark, over that 3-year period, there really was an understanding among those of us on the committee at the time that we had met the needs of what they need. we still had a gap with what they want. And if that's no longer the case, I think it's very important for us to understand that, because I think those of us around the table want to be having a discussion when it comes to budget time in November and December, to go to town meeting and say, that's what these discussions are all about,
Sure.
right? Is what do we need?
Yep.
Now, there's a reality, which is what can the town afford, but
So-
we got to have that information.
Yeah, so Mark did approach me this fall because these fall signups were, was it this fall or the spring?
So it was girls. Are you talking about girls swimming?
Adding extra coaches.
Adding a
was-
coach for girls swimming because the numbers were so great, and it's a like sailing was in the past. So in sailing we added a coach because of the safety of the sport, right?
Yep.
You're on a boat in the water and you have one coach for only a certain number of kids. Well, the same thing with the swim program. We had 69 girls come out for girls swimming.
We don't even have a pool yet.
Yeah, for fall swim. So we only have 2 coaches. They recommend 1 coach for every 25 kids. So I talked to Judy and Ellen, and we thought it was smart to bring on another coach and
An additional assistant.
an additional assistant coach, because we didn't want to turn kids away, and we're able to do it. And the coach has been very good with communicating to the kids. We obviously can't all travel. They can't all travel to away meets together. So she's great about having an away travel, roster that all the kids understand, and they've been great. They just want to be a part of a program, and our coach is great about making everyone feel like they're part of the program, which is good.
So let me open it up. Yeah,
Can I just,
Susan, go ahead, please.
Ask when the practices are? Is it still?
5:30 in the morning, 5:30 to 7.
Which is a little later than they used to be,
Half
right?
an hour later, half an hour later than they used to be.
Yeah.
It's just we have to be out of the Medford pool by 7, so
Okay.
they can't.
Appreciate the extra half hour.
Half an hour.
They absolutely do.
They do.
So
So let me open it up do folks have questions for Mark? Who would like to go first?
I could keep going if that's okay.
Yeah, please, go ahead, Susan.
I was going to say, it's great to be able to look at this budget. I can remember when we didn't really have things broken down by sport and by need line item, and it was not clear, what the real needs were and whether sports were being sort of treated equitably, and it's good to be able to look at this sort of breakdown. And I'm really struck by the amount we're paying for transportation. And can
it's crazy.
we do anything? I mean, maybe with more field time, it'll get a little better. No, yeah.
So where do we stand with that? There was that idea of the pilot, right? Some vans that we were going to lease, and is that, what's going on with that?
So what's going on with that is I have been working on doing some additional research on many of my colleagues over the summer were
Oh, good.
putting out bids. So wanted to see how their bid results came in and how their beginning of the school year with their beginning of fall sports worked with that. And then I'll be revisiting it with Mark and getting something out hopefully soon.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll have a proposal for you soon.
Great.
One of the reasons our transportation is so high is because our teams do so well and
Can they go
go
on
deep
to
into
the-
the tournament. I mean, that's
Right.
another factor.
Yeah.
If,
Yeah.
the more
Just
successful-
adding more away games,
made
so.
some allowance for that for this year, didn't you?
Yes.
Is that okay?
We increased the budget for
Yeah.
transportation because we were,
Great.
And didn't we add a coach for gymnastics too?
We did
Yeah.
another, the amount of kids with the, safety issues, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I had, yeah.
Others? Questions for Mark?
And just out of curiosity, is there a reason girls lacrosse and girls track and field are lower numbers on varsity?
And what, the amount of kids they keep?
Yeah, keep it, like there's 27 boys lacrosse, but only 18
Yeah,
on
so
the girls varsity?
generally, just in that sport, the boys lacrosse teams carry a larger amount of kids than girls do.
So it's less, because their JV teams are the same size for the most
Yep,
part, so they
yep.
just aren't continuing on?
Yep.
or-
So the varsity boys program, and it has to. A lot of it has to do with. It's funny with the lacrosse. They have the same. They use the same nets, but it's two completely different
Different
sports.
sports,
It's not like
yeah.
girls basketball, boys basketball, and in the physicality of the boys games. The boys game, it's full contact, so you
Yeah.
need to carry more just because of the physicality. Whereas the girls, it's you're not allowed to hit, so you don't really need to carry as many. So.
And the track and field was the same, but track and field I noticed had a lot of JV, but not as large of a varsity
So,
girls team.
yeah, so track and field, there are actually more girls participating in spring track than there are boys, but the amount that the way the coaches separate the teams is the breakdown is different.
Yeah.
But there are
Is it
more
a-
girls
they need to stand a
participating.
certain time standard to be varsity, or?
Yeah, well, it has to do with, you may have, the girls' program may have had more varsity girls that were able to do more events well, and boys may have had an instance where the specialization in certain events where they needed more kids to be
But
successful.
we're not setting a cap.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's
And it
enough.
changes, it differs from year to year, how many they keep, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no set number really in any sport. It all is based. It's pretty subjective with the coaches in terms of what they need and on a particular year. So
So in the past, some people might have had cuts in swimming. And we, when we saw the numbers, we were thinking that's a lot for a swim team.
Right.
But the girls, all the girls who are on the team passed a minimum standard to,
and it was a tough minimum standard too.
Mm-hmm.
so they're good swimmers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed any of the summer fundraising that was going on in area pools for Swim Winchester, but we got an awful lot of young swimmers, and that number may continue to grow years to come. I don't know where we'll find space to put them, but I sense that's a trend. Anything else, Michelle? Any questions?
I also just had a question out of another curiosity, something that I'm not sure how it works. So when we get donations to the district for PTA or PTO or WIFI, those always come before school committee for approval, but none of the booster organizations do? Is that?
No, they do. Well,
Do
so
they?
if someone donates new soccer nets, those come to you for approval, no? Yes?
I don't
So the
know. That's what I'm
fundraising,
asking.
so if it's a,
volleyball, I don't know.
Yeah. So what was the last big item that it was last year?
room equipment.
The weight room
Weight room
equipment.
equipment.
And we
do-
got into
and we
discussion about, is it
Yep.
right to pay for a monitor, right, in the space? That was like a personnel
yeah.
line item, and we sort of made an exception there, but there were some capital items that were associated
Yeah.
with that gift.
So yeah, if there's a big ticket item that is being donated, especially by the Winchester Sports Foundation, we always come to the school committee for approval,
so I think.
either
we-
with accepting the gift, or accepting.
I think what Michelle is, I think that, what you're trying to say is, if students raise money for sweatshirts or other
Right.
things, those don't come to you?
Right.
Because those, we never see that money, we don't really account for how it's spent. It's the students and the boosters who buy those things. We never hold that money, so therefore it doesn't come to school committee, because unlike other monies that are spent, it doesn't flow through us. And so that's why you don't have to accept it as a gift.
Okay.
But if, say, the Sports Foundation or some other organization is going to donate something big, that is a gift, and that comes to you. Does that make
So
sense?
is the dividing line when the district's actually going to spend the money to purchase the item? Like with for example, with the weight room equipment? Did we eventually then purchase that through the district, or did the?
No, I don't think
Does that
so.
come
No,
into-
the Sports Foundation gifted the equipment to the district
But the item is considered district property.
Then it
It's a way
becomes
different
because they gifted it.
Versus a
yeah.
sweatshirt that's the
Gifting us the
property of the student.
That's the dividing line.
So if someone were to donate soccer nets or something like that, that would come on the agenda. School committee would vote to approve
Yeah.
that gift.
But other things held by the boosters or used by the students, namely consumed at a banquet, we don't hold, so therefore they don't come to school committee for approval. I think we should probably circle back to the question about paying coaches, boosters paying coaches. And so I just want to be transparent about this. I had heard that there was a plan by a booster group to pay to gift something to the volunteers in acknowledgement of their contributions, which is always a difficult, puts us in a difficult position, because we don't approve fundraisers for kids to make money to pay coaches. If there's a need to have coaches, you approve it in the budget,
on
or
us.
I
Should
approve
be on
it,
us, yeah.
trying to be direct about this. So if people are working around that, then that's something that Mark needs to be made aware of, probably outside this meeting, and for him to investigate and speak with the boosters and the volunteer coaches. It probably behooves us, at the time that volunteer coaches come on board, that in the orientation we say, you are just like our regular coaches, you're under the same ethical standards, you're prohibited from accepting payment or gifts from outside people. Just because it muddies the water, and there could be a perception that if boosters are paying volunteer coaches or even giving gifts to our coaches, that could lead to unfair playing time or other expectations. And so we would not be able to be so successful if we didn't have as many very skilled volunteer coaches as we have, but we want to be sure that line is clean. So I just want to be transparent about that. And so if people still have concerns about that and you have heard something, then please let Mark know. There was one instance where we heard about it and Mark shut it down. And so that was the...
And because at the end of the day, these are about supporting students, and we have an athletics section of our handbook. We have an athletics page on the website. I wonder if exactly what you just articulated might even find a way to be expressed in the handbook somehow or on the website, just to be very, very clear, because we're talking about people who are having, there's a relationship with our students on the field, in the pool, what have you.
It's all
whatever
good
the sport
intentions.
is. Absolutely.
I think
sure.
that you get people who, booster groups turn over as their children graduate and
Yeah.
another group comes in, and
Yeah.
people with good intentions just may not be aware of what the rules are always.
And not, I don't want to monopolize the conversation before I throw it to Zena or Brian, but because Michelle asked the question she did, and I want to sort of keep this train of thought for a moment, there are a couple of other consequences to this. You know, there are popularity in sports rises and falls. We have groups of people in this town. Maybe they played the sport when they were in school themselves, and I'm sure Mark has seen the popularity rise and fall in certain sports. I'm always concerned that there is some, for lack of a better word, some sort of backdoor funding for a sport, which in the moment might be really helpful to those kids, but then we rely on that as an as an ongoing sort of concern, and then someday that kid graduates, the family moves out of town, and within a matter of a couple of years, suddenly the team that had relied on so much support has so little. And the parents and the kids who are coming into that sport, they're blind to where the money came from, and they become very upset. Well, wait a minute, how come we didn't get? They used to get XYZ, I watched them play, and we have a school committee and an administration that maybe finds itself flat-footed and uninformed. So for that reason as well, I think we got to really stick to it, and Mark said it well, it's what they want versus what they need. If we need coaches for any sport, that's like giving a baseball team baseballs, we should have it in our budget. And I also just want to say too that with this idea of fundraising, how maybe for more discussion after the meeting, but we have some policies around fundraising, of course. I think it's also important how our student athletes are communicating, how they're engaging with our community. I think the last time we really talked a lot in a meaningful way about fundraising was around this idea of trips, out-of-state trips and international trips, which we welcome for our kids. It's very expensive. And the committee at that time talked about opportunities for kids to kind of have some skin in the game, to do something, to work to some effect. Like you said, dump runs, they're putting in their sweat equity, right?
Yep.
There are a number of fundraisers that I've been aware of. I've actually received email solicitations from students to my district email account in the past 2 weeks, and I'm not going to name the sport, asking for hundreds of dollars. And I question if that's even appropriate to be going to an employee email account. The message itself can sometimes be confused. I'm looking now at something on social media in the spring from a student who is raising money for lacrosse. We're doing a fundraiser to get equipment and pay for the buses. So clearly that was misinformed in terms
Yep.
of what the money would be for.
Yep.
But when members of our community who participate in town meeting and they express concern when we raise bus fees and they say, well, we'll go along with the increase so long as you're covering this, they see something like this and they start to feel like, wait a minute, the message is confused.
Yep.
So before I throw it to Brian and Zena, I just want to ask, I understand the lacrosse team raised approximately $12,000 in their fundraiser. So because that's not yet come to us for a gift approval, it sounds like a lot of sweatshirts, and it's probably not just for sweatshirts. I also understand that some parents of that team were asked to make contributions to the gala. That has prompted questions like, well, why do I need to contribute that kind of money if we
What's a
raise
gala?
$12,000, the end of season gala?
Student banquet.
Student banquet, yeah.
Oh.
Which are wonderful,
Call it
by
a
the way.
gala?
They,
Yeah, we're on
It's
They're
another
nice already
level.
with the
They really
gala,
should,
I mean,
they're supposed to
yeah.
be in the cafeteria.
So it's an there's a
off-site.
long tradition of a nice sort of celebration of the season. There's a history of that in the district. The question in my mind is, if they raise $12,000, what's it for? Has the money been spent? Who has the money? Are we going to see that money? And are there other examples of that in the district?
No, I think it goes back to what Judy said earlier, is that what control do we have over that money if it's not us raising the funds? And what do we, if they purchase team gear and it's for a banquet and it's for their video system and they have all that money left over in their account, is that our responsibility? And if they're not buying anything that needs our approval, then what control do we have?
So that's the key point, is it may not all be spent, right? It may be
might
in
be
an
sitting in
account
their
for
booster
for
account.
a future year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So,
I think my experience in previous districts and as a high school principal is that it's very easy for booster groups to get into trouble, because unless they are set up as a appropriate legal organization, to have someone open a bank account that's not really a booster bank account and then deposit money in there can lead to temptation for misappropriation of funds, or funds being, the parents move on, some of the money's still there, who has control over it. And so I know this is not a popular stance. I would like to see a single booster organization for Winchester High School sports that had a board that reported back, like the parent organizations do. Here's how much money we brought in. Here's what we're planning to spend it on. And I was a coach, and we had end of the year celebrations, and they were fabulous. I think that our end of the year celebrations are sometimes over the top, and I think some of the expectation for kids to fundraise for things that are nice to have, not have to have, are inappropriate. And so the direction I'd like to see us move is to have a single booster group with more accountability to report to us about what they're spending the money on. And then those sports that don't get a lot of financial support could benefit from some of the fundraising. It's going to be a long journey to get to that point, but Mark is absolutely right. We have very little control. The only thing we can control is if someone says, I want to fundraise and here's what we're going to purchase, is to go back to that group and say,
We don't need that.
this is not appropriate, or it seems as though you raised 14 times the amount of money, and to kind of ask voluntarily, can you share that with us? But to ask Mark, how many different teams have booster groups?
there's 36 teams in the school.
Could be 36 different booster
There's
groups.
66 teams, 36 programs, so there could be 36
Ask him to
different
interact
programs.
with 36 different booster groups seems unreasonable.
Mhm.
And so I think the key thing is going to have to be to have parents trust Mark and trust the high school principal that if something puts their antenna up about, is this an appropriate fundraiser, are they asking for too much, to circle back and say, is this what I really want my child to do? This is not like in other districts where they sell the gold cards or the various cards that go back to support the athletic program directly. Anything raised by a booster group really is only intended to support the kids who are in that program right now. And so that's a different, I think that there's a mixed message around this. And so it troubles me a bit. That being said, on the whole, our boosters are incredibly generous. Our kids work hard to raise funds, and they are able to get things that we can't provide that are, nice to have, that are not have to have. We don't want our kids out there in raggedy sweat clothes, and we can't provide new sweats for our kids. It's just not in the budget.
And we've been, I've been pushing coaches, and a lot of the coaches have responded to moving end of the year banquets to the CAF, because it is a nice space now. So a lot of the programs have shifted from the history of what they've done, whether it be go to the country club or a restaurant or, somewhere outside of the district or, one of our spaces. A lot of programs have moved back to limit the amount that they're spending on the end of the season banquets. So we've been working on that end. I've been working on that end with the coaches as well to say, do you need much more than a pizza party or a barbecue, or whether it's Chipotle or whatever they're going to do, Gloria's is always great to the teams if they want to, bring in Gloria's for food, and so.
So Zena or Brian, any questions, comments tonight? Oh, you still, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just had, Mark, when you were talking about, I'm just trying to understand how it all works within the system too.
Sure.
You said when the team has a fundraiser they want to do, they speak to the booster organization to do that?
So the coach works with the booster, their individual booster organization, and then the coach brings the fundraising request to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but is it things the coaches are requesting of the booster organization, or is it just the boosters come to the coach? Or is it happening both ways?
It could happen both ways. So ultimately, the coach, thinks the video system's going to help the program. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find a football or a basketball or a volleyball program that doesn't use an electronic video system now. So they don't need it. They want it, and everyone, everyone wants it. So when everyone wants it, does that become a need? Now, is that something I should be bringing back to you? Is that want now becoming a need?
So I guess my follow-up question to that is, if they purchase an expensive video equipment system, who owns it? And if that coach leaves and goes to another place, does he take it with him?
So it's not a video. So it's not a video system. It's a program through it's like an online program. So one of the kids will bring in their iPad, and they'll tape a game on the iPad, and it'll upload to the program. So it's like a yearly subscription to a program. To like one of them's
Barn
called
for hockey or something.
One of
like
them's
that.
called Huddle, or the other one's called Crossover. And with Crossover, they do the stats for you as well. And it's just like different companies offer different things.
So there's no physical equipment that's being purchased.
Sometimes if you go through Huddle, they'll supply an iPad for the year along with their program that goes along with it. So things like that.
So there's nothing to hold on to once it's an annual subscription?
Yes.
Yeah.
So using that as an example, their football fundraiser lists a video system as one of the things they'd like to purchase, and there's no doubt that can be a bonus, right, to a team. We don't have it in our budget. That seems like something that would produce outcomes, and if the coaches say I could use it and the boosters want to have it, does that not seem like a reasonable thing that boosters could be raising money for?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good. I just want to be sure we were on the same page. So, who wants to go next?
Thinking the volunteer coaches, the coaches, that maybe we can have consider at least the same rules that teachers and us as elected officials are required to not take anything over $50. I think that's a more reasonable ask, because appreciation is just another way we value our community members. So that I don't know the process exactly, but that would be a good consideration. The other question I had to do with, and I'm sorry if I missed this already, but what decides whether or not you have a freshman or a JV team?
So it's interest and ability to run the program. So, if, for instance, softball last year, we didn't have enough interest in the program, or enough girls to field a freshman softball program. So we didn't, a freshman softball team.
Do then those kids who are interested in softball, but there's not enough of them, do they get absorbed into the upper level teams then, the JV and the varsity?
Not
Or
necessarily.
How do they then access the coaching and all of that to develop the skills to become varsity members?
Yeah, so at that point, we'll run, we'll advertise it, okay, we're going to have a varsity and JV team, and depending on the numbers, there may very well be cuts, because we don't want to put the kids in the position to not get anything out of participating in the program either. So if you're carrying, let's say 25 girls on a JV softball team, 25 is a lot for a team, but it's not enough for two teams, right? So, and if you're carrying 25 on the JV team, not every girl on that team is going to have a worthwhile experience in terms of developing the way they need to in order to get better and in order to have a good experience. So at that point, you make a decision, we're going to keep this many, focus on giving them the tools and teaching them what they need in order to get better. Well, and at the same time, the girls that don't make the team have the opportunity to go to another sport and have a worthwhile experience doing that other sport. unfortunately, not everybody can play every sport, right? We have tryouts for a reason, and you can only keep so many, and while at the same time giving all the kids, a good experience.
Is there any ability or interest in creating intramural sports? I know that was something.
So at this point, just facility-wise, it would be very difficult in terms of the field space that we have and the gym space that we have. We almost don't have enough as it is with the amount of programs that we offer. So creating intramural programs would be very difficult.
Okay, thank you.
And from a budget standpoint, again, it would probably be very difficult.
So part of Zena's question that I really liked, I think it's excellent, is that part of what she asked was, what do you do to support that girl or that boy who gets cut? We have some kids in this town who, spend practically their whole lives playing a sport that they're really passionate about. And for many of them, it's a dream. They leave McCall, they go to the high school, they try out, and they don't make the team. And, for a lot of us, we learn a lot from failure. It can be a motivator, but we talk about social and emotional wellness. There's so many ways our kids can sort of go off the rails, struggle in a classroom can affect them in the sport, but vice versa. I share Zena's sort of interest and concern, because if we've got so few kids we can't field a team, that's like one issue, right? But if you've got like 1.5 teams worth of kids, you could field a varsity, but you don't have enough for a JV, and we say to kids, we're sorry. I wonder about, and I always think about, what can we do to support those kids? Do they get a message like, really come back, try again next year? I just wanted you to speak to this. My understanding is, at least in some sports, we maybe even offer them to practice with the team. My sense is there were some girls who did not make the girls' varsity hockey team. In some years we've had a JV team. We don't every year. My understanding is those girls who were cut were offered to still show up and practice with the team. Is that
so? Some coaches
something like that?
Yeah,
happens?
so some coaches will do that. I mean, if I know the girl, like you said, girls varsity hockey has done that in the past, where they've kept 30, but obviously you can't dress. Not obviously. So for those who don't know, you can't dress 30 hockey players in a game. You can't do that. So they'll practice with the team. They'll travel with the team. They won't dress for games. There may be a game or two where they rotate through who dresses and who doesn't dress for a game, just to make sure everyone feels like they're part of the program. Easier to do when there's 30 girls. If there's 35, I don't know if that's happening. So I think there's like a number where it makes sense and a number where it doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, it's, again, very subjective. To a parent, it might make sense, but to the coach running the program, it might not make sense.
And so what I just hope is that we look at a high enough altitude to recognize that when you have a sport where we seem to each year kind of have 1.5 teams worth of talented, credible players, might we someday actually have 2 teams worth, have a JV and a varsity, if we're doing what we can do to encourage those kids to stick with the sport, whether it's practicing with a team or something else. I worry about the kid. Certainly I worry about the social emotional impact on them in other elements of their lives. But I do feel like we let kids down if it's really just something. It's such a big part of their lives, and they don't make the team, and not every kid reacts to that the same way. There are some kids who say, I'm done. I'm not coming back. I took it too personally. It was embarrassing. My friends made the team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that happens at every school in the United States.
Yeah,
and it's almost unavoidable if you're having tryout sports, right? So what do you do for those kids? And I think the best we can do as coaches and within the athletic department is let those kids know that there is something else for you. This necessarily might not be for you. If you think it's for you and you want to keep trying, I want you to keep trying.
That's good.
But at the same time, it's, keeping a kid for, I always tell a coach, if you're keeping a kid to keep a kid for 3 years, right, and their senior year they're probably not going to make the team, do them a favor.
Yeah.
Don't keep them that extra year.
Yeah.
Let them go try something else that they may have a great experience with. They might find that they're an excellent indoor track runner.
Yeah.
They don't make the basketball team.
Yeah.
One of my best friends in high school didn't make the team his freshman year. He went out for indoor track. He was a state champion his junior and senior year in indoor track. He never would have happened if he had made the basketball team or if he had been kept on the basketball team just to keep him or just to, and then he goes through 4 years of high school never knowing that he could be really good at something else while having a bad experience doing this.
Yeah.
So there's something for everyone, if they're willing to try.
That's a great example.
And we've had plenty of wrestlers in this town who, it's one of the biggest sports programs this town's ever seen. most of those kids got cut from other sports. Most of them. So, and we've had one of the best wrestling programs in the state because of it. So,
Brian?
So I want to follow up on what Zena asked you. Simply because we have the spring sports right here. Which of the spring sports or last year were non-cut? So you want to go play sports. Which of those sports are non-cut?
so let me just pull. We have so many. I just got to pull them up. So
Ellen has a book, she can just.
I
pull
have
it.
it right on my phone. It's not a big deal. It's just going to take 2 seconds. Sorry. So, in the spring.
Just because we have the spring here, I mean.
Sure. So, girls track and field is non-cut, and it may be our only program because we're growing significantly. Sailing used to be a sport that if you went out for sailing, you were on the team. We're now at the point where it's extremely competitive, and we need to make cuts because there's only so many boats, and we're not providing any experience at all if we keep a lot of kids because we have 6 boats, and
You can't put 5
you
kids on a
can't
boat.
put 5 kids on a boat. So,
Need a big boat.
same with ultimate frisbee. I mean, it used to be a situation where we didn't make cuts. Now there are, a lot of kids going out for ultimate frisbee, and we need to, do our best to try to have a competitive program, serious program to try to. There was a lot of ultimate frisbee players who were trying to get phys ed credit as well, and we have to take that into consideration. We make cuts in
Do we
that.
cut for
so.
boys track and field or?
No. So boys and
boys and
girls.
girls.
Boys
you
and
asked
girls.
what- So boys and girls track and field is
Boys and
non-cut.
girls JV track and field, would that be?
Would be
So
not-
basically what happens is track and field is non-cut. And then when you go out for the sport and you're doing an event, if you're one of the top, let's say, 6 in the event, you run at all the meets. And then if you're not one of those top 6, you still run. It's not. It's
Usually
counted.
get
It's
points.
counted in the
Usually
JV
get
meets.
J-
Yeah, you get
to be
JV
varsity
points.
by earning.
So
Okay.
That's really one of the only sports where as an individual you have to perform at a certain level to be varsity, as opposed to being named varsity at
Yeah.
the beginning of your varsity basketball player. You get the-
Versus trying.
it's very. It's if you run fast, if you jump high, if you jump long. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's
It's a
very.
pure
It's
sport.
not subjective at all. It's very
pure.
exact. If
Yeah.
you're fast, you're on the varsity.
Yeah.
If you're not, you're on the JV. And on being on JV, the objective is to get faster to make the varsity. So.
Do we keep track of how many kids are cut from each sport? I see varsity, JV, freshman. We don't know how many kids were cut from any of these sports.
No, we haven't kept track. I'm sure we have the number somewhere. I don't have it on me tonight, but I'm sure we have the figures of how many kids were cut.
So Michelle has asked before if we have or if we can keep track of, maybe not phrased exactly that way, but at least who's trying out. I mean, do we keep records of who's showing up and trying out?
Yeah, so we have the records of who signed up for the sport each year.
Some
The
kids may
issue
not
is,
show
right,
up.
so they
Yeah.
sign up, they don't show up,
Yeah.
they sign up, they get cut, they go to another sport,
Right.
so.
So typically, though, not large numbers of kids don't get cut from some teams. Sometimes it's
No,
only a
it-
handful of kids, right?
Yeah, there's never a situation where, cutting more than, on a certain team, you're not cutting more than 10, 15 kids. I mean, that rarely ever happens.
I guess I'm curious to see how close on some of the sports we are on, if they're to that other team.
To having a freshman team or a JV team.
Right. If
And-
we're not keeping track of how many kids were.
Yeah,
not
no, I don't
accepted.
think, I think
It's
it's a
not-
matter of you have to field a competitive team, too. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
that's
so
the other-
we had a league meeting today, and we talked about that as well. You also don't want to field a team to say you're fielding a team.
Right.
That creates a miserable experience for all the kids involved.
Right.
We talked about disparities in scores within the league today in terms of freshman programs. Even some JV programs, schools are filling out 7th and 8th grade waivers just to field a freshman team. Their freshman team showing up and then losing 10-0 in soccer, and that's not a good experience for either team. Really, it's not worth a worthwhile experience for the team winning or losing.
Right.
So we don't want to do that to
Not a
kids as well.
well-matched pair.
Yeah, we don't want to do that to kids as well.
So I want to be, MIAA allows 7th and 8th grade waivers. I thought it was just for your varsity team. They allow you to, if you have a varsity team in any sport, they also allow waivers for sub-varsity?
It's a possibility if you don't offer middle school programs.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Can I just
Go ahead.
follow up once? So I think you said track and field for boys and girls were both
Non-cut. Yep.
that is the extent of sports, spring sports that are non-cut?
I believe so. I don't have the complete list of spring sports in front of me, but let me see. Sorry. What's lacrosse?
There may be some teams where no one was cut. It may
Which
be a
is-
cut sport, but it may be a team where
Correct,
the numbers
yeah.
worked out and they kept everything.
And that's.
So I think
guess-
ultimate frisbee actually didn't cut last year, so that was technically a non-cut. You know, they had a non-cut season.
'Cause I think that's-
There is an opportunity, and there is a non-cut opportunity every season for students that get cut from another sport.
I want to be
Yep.
clear, though, that the non-cut, the only non-cut by design at spring is track and field. The other sports, be it ultimate frisbee, softball, who knows, are only non-cut if it's simply the numbers worked out and everybody met the
Correct.
the capabilities to not be cut.
Correct.
So, okay,
Yep.
so just the opportunity that everybody has ultimately is track and field. I want to understand that
Yeah.
is ultimately, if somebody has A for effort and maybe, I hate to use letters, I shouldn't do that. If somebody has a real lot of effort and maybe not the most athletic individual,
The beauty of
it would be track and field.
beauty of track and
He's gonna
field
sell track and field again.
is that you can be any.
I'm going to back up slowly.
Because I don't think kids all often recognize this. You can be any body type and be successful in track and field. If you're big and heavy, you could be a thrower. If you're, sometimes you don't even know what you're good at until you try it. And so I just think I think it's a beautiful sport.
No,
So
I love
so-
track and field. I love running, and I'm slow, and I still love it. And
And-
that would be where I would end up because I'm slow. I wouldn't make any of these other teams, but I could make that team.
Sometimes
'cause
you
they
don't
let
have
me
enough
run.
people to run the 2 mile, and the slow guy gets in there and he places. So it's it is what it is.
So in the winter, we have, there's indoor track for both boys and girls and wrestling that are non-cut. So wrestling's non-cut as well.
The other thing I think Mark didn't say tonight is, even if we had kids, sometimes they can't find other teams for them to play against because there are not as many freshman teams as there used to be in some towns. And so even just making a reasonable schedule, even if we had more kids,
Yeah.
is very, very
So,
difficult.
yeah, so if we had a girls' JV ice hockey team, we would be one of 2 teams in the league that offers it. We're actually one of 2 teams that offers boys freshman lacrosse in the league, so we have to go out and find a bunch of non-league teams to play against, which
It's
can
challenging.
be difficult. So,
Increases our transportation costs.
there you go.
And,
Go.
and accurate, totally accurate as that is, I agree with Mark 100%. There are other issues here that come into play. People's perception of what Title IX even means, the knowledge that some have that once upon a time we had a girls' JV hockey team, but now we don't. But we have one for the boys, and questions about, well, is that fair? And to have to sort of explain, well, who showed up, who tried out, could we or couldn't we field a team? And to Mark's point, even if you had a team, there's not a whole lot of, all the communities right around us don't have the JV teams that we can compete against. Doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing if we've
Sure.
got the interest. Did you have any other questions, Mark?
No problem.
So I just wanted to close with a thought that came up the last time we talked to Mark in his athletics report, which was that we look at sports traditionally based on participation, and then Ellen has kind of the bottom line cost per sport. When we look at cost per sport per student athlete, the order changes dramatically. So if I asked you, what do you think the most expensive sport is per student athlete in the fall? Mark would say
Football.
football. Do you know what the second is?
For the fall or for the year?
For the fall. I think it's fall. Is golf in the fall?
Golf is in the fall.
Golf is the second most expensive.
Well, there's 16 kids on the team.
That's the issue. So it's, you take the cost.
16.
And the most expensive sport per student athlete in our entire district,
Girls hockey.
girls hockey. It's the cost of the ice divided by such a few number of kids. The average cost per student athlete, it varies by season. We talked about this last time. It's around $650, right? $725, something like that. Some of these sports are really expensive. And I think when you look at it through that lens, a concern I have is that maybe not this committee, but a future school committee might say, wow, can we justify the investment? Can we justify that? Look at what we're spending to make this sport work. And I hope that, the support is always here at the table, not to sort of contract, but to maintain those services. Mark, we've been talking about these long-term budget planning discussions, the need for an override to kind of, to really be forward-looking in how we can support and deliver services to our students. Athletics is absolutely a part of that. Just want to be sure it's not forgotten and left on the cutting room floor. But you were going to say something.
So I'd be interested to see if you took transportation out of the mix, how much golf would be per student.
Do we supply clubs?
Fair point. I took Ellen's bottom line. And to Susan's point, transportation's a big part of it. Ice is expensive, transportation's very expensive. This has been very helpful to me. I think this has actually been the deepest dive we've done with you on this stuff, and I think it was really instructive, so I really appreciate it. If there are members, Judy, who have follow-up questions, they can go to you.
Right. Go to me. Mark and I will be transparent. Ask us questions. And Mark has been incredibly forthright and has addressed every single issue that has come my way that I've asked him about. And so I think we can trust that he will continue to do that.
Right.
And he's had to make he's had to have some hard conversations, had to make some hard choices, and I think he's done a really good job. So.
Thank you, everybody.
Right. Thank you very much, Mark.
Have a good
Really
evening.
appreciate it.
Good
Have a
luck
good
with
night.
the next few games.
Enjoy those lights. Oh, we were gonna get back to Eversource.
Yes. Yeah, the lights,
Yeah.
Eversource.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the connection with-
we can ask you this question.
Yeah.
Does this have to do with the labor action?
Yes.
Okay.
So, out of curiosity, my daughter had a practice scheduled on the Skillings field, 7:30 to 9. Does that mean that wouldn't have happened? It didn't happen because of a rainstorm, but if the lights don't
Oh,
work,
it rains,
then
so you don't-
it wouldn't have happened anyway.
Right, so we expected the lights to be on and working. We hope they'll be working by October, which doesn't do us a lot of good in the fall season, but for the last few weeks of the fall season perhaps. Marcus had to scramble to reschedule, and it's not anyone's fault, it's just the connections haven't been made, and we can't use the field yet.
I should let the coach know that they can't practice there, because it was scheduled.
Get about
We
an
just-
hour before it gets dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do what I do, turn the lights of your cars on.
I was just gonna say, use the headlights.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
On the track field, right?
Might-
I was running on school
I was going to say,
property.
we might hear about that, yeah.
Just kidding, environmental
That was just a joke.
friendly,
That was a joke.
idling
Yeah,
is
that was a
allowed.
joke, that was a joke, that was a joke.
Just kidding.
Not to go into the
Just a
minutes, that was a joke.
Resisting,
Okay.
All right, so moving on, promise this will be a quick report on Parkhurst Mystic Elevator Project. So as you know, town meeting approves capital funding, and there was a set aside on the ADA line to move forward with finding a design solution for elevators for the Parkhurst and Mystic School. The end result, we're actually not just doing schematic design, we're looking to produce construction documents with a hard cost that we can then kind of plan for how we're going to build it. So what you have before you, we don't have any drawings yet on Parkhurst, on Mystic. I'll speak to that in a minute. Parkhurst, we thought going into this was sort of the bigger challenge, because unlike Mystic, where there actually is this one place where just really everyone is agreed, that's sort of where the elevator has to go, because at Mystic we're serving 3 floors. If you think about it, we have an upper floor, a lower floor, and that gymnasium auditorium is sort of a middle level. There happens to be a large storage room right next to the auditorium at Mystic, and it's next to a fire stair. The space is stacked. Seems like it was just tailor-made for an elevator, and in fact, the architects have agreed, yes, that's really the only place it can go. And I'll speak to that more later. Parkhurst, I think, was a little more of a head-scratcher for us, because it wasn't really obvious where we could put an elevator without losing some really valuable space program. And so if you remember back from the master plan, the reason we said we don't want to sell this property is because we know we're going to need the building, whether that's a early childhood education center, or maybe some municipal offices move in downstairs. Judy's been talking with some collaboratives who have interest in space. The last thing we want to do when we talk about how we're out of space is to take out a classroom. So the architects rolled up their sleeves and kind of looked at a couple of different options here at Parkhurst. One option did consider building an elevator on the exterior of the building down at this lower level parking lot where we access the auditorium. You can imagine putting an elevator on the exterior of the building means we're breaking into the exterior wall, because now you got to get to it. And to get to it, you go through a classroom. So we looked at that. This, though, was the alternative. And I can best sort of summarize it by saying, if you look on the cover sheet, L101, you'll see on either side where the gym meets the double-loaded corridor, we have a pair of stairs. All right. Well, if you turn the page, go to P302, you're looking at the upper level, second floor of Parkhurst. We see an elevator off the corridor, and I'll ask you to turn the page once more to P301A, and this is where it might make sense. Down at the first floor, the stair's gone. So what the architects have discovered is that when Parkhurst was originally designed and built, it was built in two phases, I think 48 and 55 or something like that. The architects basically provided two stairs for symmetry, for convenience, not for code. Even by today's much more aggressive standards in the life safety code, this building meets the egress requirements of the
There are
building.
3 stairs, actually.
There's lots of stairs.
There's lots of stairs, and our floors have direct access to the outside, again, from a life safety point of view.
So we can give up some stairs.
We can give up some stairs, and this, because this is not a 500-student building, and we're not expected to move 500 students up and down a set of stairs, right? So just given the size of the building, it was thought this might make sense. So what you see here is an option that basically takes out a stair. We have an elevator. We need to find space for a machine room because this would be a hydraulic elevator. So that's the same in each one of these plans. I'm going to ask Ellen to talk about the other piece of this, which is we need to make the platform, the stage, accessible. So there are really 3 options that the team came up with. You want to speak to those?
Sure. So they did come up with three options, and those are on your plans, marked 3A, B, and C. So myself, Chris, Meg White, have gone downstairs and looked at, with the plans, each of the scenarios. Meg White will be meeting with, and including in conversations, the town's, Commission on Disabilities, to get their input on, which of the 3 plans, they feel is the most appropriate for the building, based upon what our population and use of the building will look like.
So really, the difference is is the lift accessible from the hall, or is it accessible through
The corridor.
the corridor? And do we lose space on the stage, or do we lose space in the back area, which is storage? What you don't see here is the current condition. There's a small flight of stairs that goes up to access the stage. There's a similar flight on the other side of the stage, so if we were to lose those stairs and wanted to access the stage from that corridor, you just, walk down a few feet and access the other side. And also, this is what I like about this plan is it puts the lift in an area that's not intrusive into the playing space would be the cafegimatorium if this becomes a school. And keeps that, maintains that space for either a gymnasium kind of use or performance space. And some of the lifts can be pretty intrusive in terms of the amount of square footage they take up and how distracting they are for the people who are sitting in the audience. So I think this is a good solution. So, I'd like to know more, but I think, obviously that putting it in the rear would be my option, so you maintain as much of the stage space as possible.
Which one is that, Judy?
I think 3C would be my preference.
Yep.
Keep the stairs and and just lose a little.
Yep.
I don't know if one's more expensive than the other in terms of having to carve out, new walls or whatever.
Yeah, we think they're all very similar in cost. On 3C, the one thing that actually is missing that will show up in a later plan is because these are corridor walls, they're rated fire assemblies, so in fact, there would be basically a door there to preserve that, so it's not a big deal. We can still make the scheme work, and it adds a little bit of cost. The other, of course, reality is some of these lifts are more, I'll say, conspicuous than others, which I think is one of the things they wanted to talk to the DAC about, is if you've got a student using the lift, what's appropriate, what's not. So I thought that was a good suggestion on Meg's part. But it's all basically in the same place in all 3 schemes. It's just how you configure it. There's no real difference in cost. And I think on the basis of the consensus of the working group, our architect is already working with the cost estimator to try to come up with some numbers for what this would cost. The cost estimator on this project is the same company that did all the estimates on VO, actually.
Right, so I'm sure you discussed this, but if members of the public were to use this space and wanted to access the stage, they'd have to enter into the school, they'd have to you know, if they came in through the elevator, they could go in that way. But there is, unlike other kind of auditorium space, there's direct access into this room from the exterior as well. And so that helps.
Accessible entry.
Accessible entry from the exterior. Right.
I'm glad they'll be talking to the Disability and Access Commission too, because looking at the 3 diagrams, I was looking at 3C as well, but mostly from an ease of use standpoint. I was imagining the number of turns that a young child in a wheelchair or with an assistive device would have to make coming out of the elevator and around a corner and around the corner. So I'm also going to encourage them to look at sort of not just, you know, what the standards are, but the ease of use and what makes most sense. So I appreciate the visibility, and I think, just to be clear, we've also made sure that there's no ability to put a ramp in any of these locations instead of a lift.
The ramp is just so physically intrusive
Just
because
eats
of
up
the
the whole
slope,
stage.
the
Eats
shallow slope that's required.
Even if it
yeah.
comes from the corridor,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you have to go around a corner.
around a corner.
If you
now.
cut,
Okay.
you cut the minimum egress width out of the corridor.
Right.
So I think the other thing to keep in mind is, having had lifts installed in lots of my previous schools, they get very little use. They're almost never used.
Right.
And so the stage, you want the stage to be accessible for performance if students are going to have a performance, and that's when the lift might be used, unless you were,
That's what I was kind of trying to imagine. If you were in a class, you have a class with a child who uses a wheelchair, and it's sort of like their turn to be up on the stage.
Right.
You know, how would that
Yep.
flow? And
Right.
it just seemed
I just
better to have fewer turns and
Yeah.
I
the
just want to
child
say
could
that
do it by themselves better, so, yeah.
it wouldn't just be a student. We could possibly
true,
have
too.
teachers,
Right.
administrators, so it
Absolutely.
isn't just
Right.
a smaller child. It could
Correct.
be a full-size.
right, but this is not the kind of space that's used on a daily basis.
Right.
you
No.
know, so.
And it's not just coming off the elevator and getting onto the stage, it's coming from the auditorium and getting on the stage as well.
Correct.
So it sounds like, I'm glad the disability folks are gonna look at it.
Yep.
Brian?
Just have an observation and a question. So the observation would be that if students or teachers or anyone was going into the auditorium at the same time that someone was trying to get into the stage, there would be a log jam there. So the 3C makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the sort of
Yep.
everybody trying to use it at the same time.
Hallway.
Correct.
The, I guess the question, Ellen, as far as the electrical needs for this, I know that one of the capital requests was for a design I guess I don't want to call it design, I want to call it, I just want to get the right, engineering study of the electrical needs of this building. At the moment, it doesn't look like that will be funded through capital. When I spoke to Meg White, she said that the needs of this elevator would be assessed as part of this project. How does that tie in, or how would that have tied in with the request through capital for doing an electrical engineering study? And then I guess we don't know what the cost will, but ultimately we're going to need to put this elevator in. Are we going to likely need an electrical upgrade?
Give an answer.
Yes.
Wow. You look surprised.
Give it.
So, right,
You
We'll know in
thought
2
of
weeks.
this? Yeah.
No, in 2 weeks.
We're going to have a detailed estimate of this scheme, We're going to have a full schematic estimate in 2 weeks. The electrical engineers have been out to this building and Mystic. We asked them, Ellen asked them specifically at this table, a week and a half ago, where do we stand on electrical? They understood, their electrical engineer wasn't in on the meeting, that they believe at one building we may have a primary supply issue, but maybe not at the other, and they weren't sure yet which building it was. And even if they did, they were going to wait until they saw the engineering report, because they're really just sharpening their pencils. But the cost to do, we're not going to get an estimate to do this and then have to go find power later. If we need to upgrade the primary electrical service, it's going to be in the number.
Okay.
So literally within 2 weeks, we should have some information to share, certainly from the next school committee meeting.
Right.
That's a good segue then for Mystic, where I described it's really obvious where the elevator has to go. Because these are hydraulic elevators, they don't use weights and pulleys like a high-rise. They use just hydraulic ram. You have to have a room for the hydraulic pumps. Those rooms really can't be more than 10 or 15 feet away from the elevator for the physics to work. And so at Mystic, while it's really obvious where the elevator needs to go, we have some challenges about where to put the machine room. One option they're looking at is to literally build an interstitial floor with some steel in that sort of vertical shaft I described. That's not cheap. Another option is to maybe put it in the auditorium. Does it go like in the corner of the stage? And if it goes into the corner of the stage, that kind of then affects what the stage looks like. So I think Zena, you were asking, or Michelle was asking about a ramp. You know, we also need to be sure that the stage at Mystic is accessible. So that we're having some conversations now about, well, how exactly is the stage used? What goes on in that space? Some of us may be familiar how Chris engages that space for all sorts of play activity, and that play activity is sort of limited to kind of the assembly space. It doesn't go up to the stage. So we're open to at least exploring, maybe do we need to repurpose that into the room? It's worth asking the question. But we won't do that without getting input from the people who use the building.
Does it create noise also? So if somebody's doing a play or something and all of a sudden the elevator's
Very
going,
limited.
you.
Very
minimal?
limited. Very limited. The walls get insulated, the doors are sealed and all that. I mean, it's actually the loudest when you're in the elevator. If you've ever been in a hydraulic elevator, you know, you hear the sound, but it shouldn't disturb people near it.
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have good stage space in a lot of schools,
Yeah.
and particularly Lincoln.
So we just didn't feel we were ready to bring the option yet on Mystic, but we will, you know, by the next meeting. So some great progress. Then we go on to first reading of revised policy. So policy subcommittee has been busy. Zena and Michelle, who wants to lead this one off?
I can tee this one up. So, the first of the policies that are on our first reading in there, numbers 1 through 5, you'll note all have the highlighted phrase pregnancy or pregnancy-related condition. This has been added to our policies because of the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act that went into effect in April of this year. And so we really needed to update just these particular policies under MASC guidelines. Judy, by the way, page 20.
Mm-hmm.
It says Pregnancy Workshop Fairness Act.
Workshop, ooh,
Yeah.
autocorrect. Page 20.
Page
Where is it?
20.
Looks like there's a work, oh, yes, Workers Fairness Act.
Workers.
Workshop, that's an auto correct.
Yeah. So that's
All right, that's
the
why we have a
only
reading.
thing that has been added to these policies and then noted directly at the bottom. The second group of policies are policies that have actually been added, suggested to be added by MASC, and they are about equal educational opportunities. One is for military children and children in foster care, and specifically one for children in foster care. So these are brand new to us. These were not in our.
New to us, and did they exist in the MASC template prior? Or these are
Recently.
brand new even to?
Just recently even
like-
to MASC.
Okay, so,
I think they're like newly enacted.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
State law? State law.
ESSA? New?
Oh,
They're from federal.
Yeah.
okay.
So the MASC has been, I think that it's such a we pay a very reasonable membership fee to MASC, and I think they do a
Yeah.
great service on their legal team, making sure that they recommend policy updates, keep us out of trouble, so that's a good thing.
Right. The Massachusetts, I think, is the Fostering Connections that's
Okay.
at the bottom, is the law that.
Got it.
So those are first reads.
So you can take a look at those and then we'll approve them next time.
Right.
Yeah, we don't need to read through them. Especially, given the first batch, Michelle, as you were summarizing it,
Yeah.
the amendment is pretty consistent throughout
Yep.
those existing policies. Okay. And there's nothing, it doesn't seem to me, there's nothing here in the book from a policy point of view that even approaches like an unfunded mandate or anything that would impact our budget planning and so forth. I feel like that's always a question to ask as a matter of course. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that.
No, and the military children and the children in foster care is really just about being able for them to extend consistency in their
Sure.
school-based environment depending on the children's flexibility to move around.
Right.
To give them a consistent place to be able to stay.
Okay.
They're all things we do anyway, but
Mhm.
it's good to have it in the policy.
Okay. So thank you. We'll do a second reading and vote at the next meeting.
We will.
So next item, under action items, which really isn't one tonight, is the PPA proposal for Vincent Owen and just an update on the high school. So I've asked Susan to speak to this in some detail, but I will just tell you we're very close on Vincent Owen, but not quite there. We have a contract that's almost agreed to among the parties, and even as I was driving over here tonight for our dinner with leadership team, was getting exhibits emailed from Meg to sort of show how close they are. So I'm hopeful that at our next meeting we'll have something to vote. I know some members have said, please let us see the contract before we vote, and absolutely we'll do that. We'll try to get something in the packet. But Susan, can you just talk about kind of where we are with VO and then maybe pivot to the high school?
Sure. So, if you remember from the last time, the Energy Management Committee has been trying to come up with a way to have, put some solar power arrays on the rooftops of Vincent Owen and the high school. And we wanted the EFPBC to look at the plans and just weigh in on the technical aspects, particularly whether the roof, the structural capacity of the roof is sufficient to hold them. They're not heavy, but in and of themselves, but in order to keep them from blowing off the roof, they're so light they will actually blow off the roof in a storm. In order to attach them to the roof, you don't, want to drill holes and put brackets and things into the roof itself. You use a ballast system, which is adds weight. So you want to be sure that the roof's capacity to hold the weight is sufficient, especially if you calculate in that in New England it's going to snow, and that adds weight to the roof as well. So that was one of the things we wanted the EFPBC to look at, and their VO was constructed with extra capacity in that classroom wing, so that's where they're going to put them. They're not going to put them on the other parts of the building at VO. Another thing we wanted the EFPBC to look at, or that they actually identified, was we want to be sure to maintain the warranty on the roof surface itself, so you don't have a leaking roof and no warranty. Both the high school and VO roofing companies have sort of a set of requirements that you have to go through and fulfill to maintain the warranty, and so the solar company is on board with meeting all those requirements and then getting some kind of a letter from the roofing company reinstating the warranty. And then we also wanted to ensure that the DPW can get around, navigate the roof safely when they need to go up there to maintain the HVAC equipment, or to maybe see if there's a leak, or just to inspect. So that's, that we're working with the DPW. This kind of flushed out another issue that Chris was working on, about how there are regulations under OSHA about being sure that the roofs have fall protection built in, and that means either having everything, all the equipment that's up there at least 15 feet away from the edge, or have other protections, like ensure that the people who go up there are always wearing some kind of a harness and hooked up to a line, or having guardrails. So that's still, I think, a little bit of an open issue, but I think we've gotten to a point, especially on VO, where we understand how that needs to be designed, essentially. And the other thing was, we want to be sure that the contract is, covers us, and Meg has been working with town council as well on the contract. So we're very close on VO, and I think there's a lot more. There are a couple more things that we need to continue to negotiate or understand at the EFPBC table before they make a, vote on the high school definitively to make a recommendation or not. So, as Chris said, I think, we're a lot closer on VO than on the high school, but we're still working.
And the high school option's not dead. The vendor has brought in a couple of different options. The EFPBC has made specific suggestions. One thing that came out just in the past couple of weeks was you know, we've talked in the past about making some structural accommodation in some of our buildings just to hold the weight. And at the high school, you know, Skanska was there, and they said, you know, in the A, B, and C wing, we actually put in the conduit for it. So in one instance, I think the Select was kind of focused more on the gym, and it was an EFPBC member who said, well, it's not a huge critical mass, but you've got an opportunity to put panels here, here, and here. We should probably do that. So they've reacted to that and, you know, continued to sort of go back and forth. Judy, what would you add to it?
I think that it's important to note that there's a general commitment to installing solar, that we would like to install solar. We are obviously concerned about being able to maintain and access the roofs to keep them snow-free, to keep pathways for maintenance workers, make sure those workers are safe. There's a lot more units on roofs now than there used to be a long time ago, and they require a lot more maintenance and a lot more access of roofs. And in recent years, there's been certainly concern about snow cover on roofs and the impact on older, particularly older buildings. And so we're talking about our two newest schools that are, you know, designed to accept the load of solar panels to some extent. And so it's just a matter of negotiating these last few details, and I think this has taken longer than everybody expected. But it's been a really good partnership between DPW, who've been very forthcoming but specific and sort of saying what they think that we need. The architect, the project manager for the high school, looking at drawings, looking at EFPBC doing due diligence. And so really, and lots of work with Meg and town council on the contract side. And school committee members have been heavily involved as well. And so we're trying very hard to make this happen, but we want to be very prudent and careful and not jump into something without having both eyes open. So that's kind of where we are with it.
And so just in terms of process, to remind folks, this is kind of a three-step process. The EFPBC, in fact, voted, I guess they voted at the meeting before last to recommend to the school committee that we move forward with panels on the third floor classroom wing. And that's what we asked them to do, was to look at this and make a recommendation. They rejected a proposal on the high school, but invited the vendor to come back, and so they did, and that continues. So EFPBC is the first step. Second step is we vote. We don't have to wait for the high school to vote on VO. And then once we vote, it goes to the select board. So to kind of, I have, again, reiterated something I think we've talked about before, which is just to keep the ball moving, because the select board has their own posted meetings. If and when the VO documents are ready, PPAs are ready, the exhibits are ready, members have in the past said they might be willing to have an afternoon session. So, you know, Judy, we might do that. We might post a meeting and just kind of knock this important item off. We don't have to take up time on a Tuesday to do it. But we need to get the documents first and then give everybody time to read them. The contract's going to be about 56?
It's not a small document.
It's not a small document.
It's you know, the financial aspects are complicated, and the you know, it covers 20 years of, you know, design, build, operate, maintain. So
Conditions.
to some extent, it's not stuff that is even really in our, you know, wheelhouse to evaluate. But yeah, it's not a quick read.
But it does speak to things like when contractors who have access to our schools, and there's some mention of Corey requirements and so forth, things we might be interested in. Judy?
Yeah, we're not trailblazing on this one. There are lots and lots of other districts. Select has done 100 plus of these installs, and so.
And I was going to say that I think that a piece that might be missing, and I know it's 9 o'clock at night or here right now, but maybe when we have the high school on the agenda, I know this is kind of started years and years ago, as a gentleman who came for public comment, you know, said that, and maybe I think it would be really worthwhile to have Susan McPhee or somebody give us a little sort of capsule history about, you know, why are we even looking at this and what the financial impact. You know, there would be substantial energy savings for the town, and it's you know, just try to understand why we're doing it in the first place. I think it would be nice to do that when we take up the high school one.
Yep, good idea.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yep. As far as these two projects, the VO and the high school solar panels, can they be taken Are the financial terms of them the same if we take them as two separate projects versus one? That is to say that if we say at the end of the day, we just do VO,
Yeah.
are we gonna get the same amount of savings from
I don't think
VO
so.
as if we did them together?
I think from Select's standpoint and Power Options, which is a sort of overarching program that
It's like a consortium we're members of.
consortium that buys energy. This is viewed as one project, it's
That's-
like the Winchester project,
Yeah.
if it has, and it also includes the DPW
Yeah.
building. So, I think it's still viable as a project with just VO and the DPW. I don't know about if the high school completely drops out. I have the sense that it would still go forward, but I think it does have some impact on the financial benefit to the town if it's smaller, yeah.
So does it behoove us to, if we choose to do so, approve them at the same time? Is there any value to approving VO and then WHS at a later date, or can
Yeah.
we do anything until we do both of them?
I think we could just go ahead and do VO.
I think what Brian's asking is there
Oh, you
any
mean vote?
value in rushing to do one at a time, or just wait till everything
we've
is
got
done
both of
and do
them.
it together, because the whole project's gonna be done together anyway?
Exactly, it's one project, and if we decide to only do one of them, then
Is
it's.
the deadline is the real deadline the high school?
I might say, I think the way Susan hit it on the head, I think Power Options looks at this as the Winchester project, just as they might look at a Wakefield project, but then when you actually look at it, you realize it's got these components. There is a contract with financial terms associated with VO
Yeah,
and rates.
that's true.
And that is different than what we have at the high school. And those contracts are being adjusted based on how many panels can we get up there. Meg did specifically ask of Select, if the high school just went away, if we could not do the high school, do we even still do VO? Are you still interested? The answer was absolutely yes. And so I think for the reasons Susan said, I mean, there's lots of reasons why we should be doing this aside from just pocketbook impact, in my opinion. So I think, I would support it moving forward with VO. And then I think what you're asking is, taken as a whole, is there some better discount? If you will?
Exactly, do we get a better discount if we do both, such that we would want to wait till we knew that the high school was a no-go or a go before we approved them both?
No, I don't think the timing
So
matters.
my
That's the
suggestion,
question. I don't
yeah,
think the timing
so it's
matters.
not just the high school and VO, there's also a DPW project as well. But I think that's beyond the purview of the school committee vote.
I think that might
The town side negotiates the contract and the terms of the contract in terms of financials. And so I think they're well aware that they might want to wait and renegotiate the financial terms if all three projects were to go forward. Or they may just take them each separately, depending on if there's not going to be a significant give on the other side if all three go through.
And Select is doing a lot of design work with us that they
DPW,
don't typically
one of
do.
the
They
DPW
typically
buildings.
sign contracts and then they move into design, which in my opinion is a little bass-backwards, but I think we're doing it right. I'm glad we're asking the questions. Okay, so stay tuned. Hopefully we'll get something in front of you all very soon. We have a gift from the John and Mary Murphy Foundation. Is Ellen presenting?
Yeah, sure, do you want to?
Sure. The high school had submitted a grant proposal to the John and Mary Murphy Foundation for AP Computer Science Principles programs. The foundation approved it with a $5,400 funding check.
Everybody?
Happy to make
I
your
vote
motion.
to accept with gratitude a grant in the amount of $5,400 from the John and Mary Murphy Foundation for the AP Computer Science Principles Program as presented.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. And we have vote to approve minutes of July 24th and August 14th. I think the only feedback I got was Susan. We don't have anything at the table amended. Was there, could you or Susan summarize?
Well, I very quickly, I wanted to just add some additional material to the paragraph on the Healthy Youth Act, just to recap the things it would have done and it might still do if it ever gets enacted, which is to make sure that our sex education program is age-appropriate and comprehensive, and be appropriate for students of whatever their gender preferences, and would also include fostering communication skills for healthy relationships. And I sent it to Frida, and I think she understands what, the gist. She already made it.
Yep.
Yep, I think that was, and then there was something in the superintendent's report about the zoning boards of appeals meeting. It was an appeal on the building permit for the field.
Right, second line should say, discussion took place regarding an appeal of the building permit for lights at Knowlton Stadium.
Be a little more
Yeah, that
precise.
was
No
good.
biggie.
And you also, Susan, you picked up on Lynch MSBA, first
we did.
paragraph. Judy did say the district submitted SOI forms for both Lynch and Morocco, designating Lynch as first priority. That seems like a good suggestion. And you had a question, Susan, update on budget planning working group. Something seemed to be missing.
Oh, yeah,
That was on this meeting,
That's-
yeah.
yeah.
I sent it to you, I don't know.
Oh, I
You
didn't see
probably
it.
didn't have time to
Yeah.
read it. But it was omitted, I might have deleted it when I was doing some minute, editing.
So there's a summary of that element for these minutes.
I'm sure it's fine.
So given that the committee hasn't seen it all, I mean, is it better maybe we just park this till the
Yeah,
next meeting?
sure.
I mean, all the work's done. I thought that all of Susan's comments made a lot of sense, so let's skip that one.
Do we need to put off both, or is one?
I didn't have any comments on the other one.
No,
on
I,
the August
okay.
14th? So
Yeah.
we can, so we're just
Yeah.
gonna move the 7/24 to the next meeting,
yep,
and then perhaps vote on the August 14th.
yep. So is there a motion on the minutes of August 14th?
I moved it. Go ahead.
Move to approve the school committee minutes of August 14th, 2018 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. No chair report tonight. Judy?
That's a lot of pressure.
I'm sorry, would you like me to talk?
Okay, a few things. I'm sure there'll be some questions on some of this. The opening of school went very smoothly. All 7 schools opened. Enrollment is just about on target. We have no significant hotspots that required us to add any additional teachers. I'll give you, on October 1st, as usual, the official enrollment figures for this year. The change in school start time is obviously something that we were watching closely to be sure that we looked at traffic and buses in relation to the flipping of the schedules for the elementary and the secondary programs. As is the case every year, Ellen worked closely this summer based on the bus registrations with both the bus company and an outside expert to look at the routes to be sure that we had estimated appropriately, that we had enough buses for the students who've registered for passes. As is also the case every year, we had a few glitches to start. Primarily, first day, and it's only the 5th day of school, the number of students who ride the bus varies considerably after the first couple of weeks of school. Lots of parents might add students later or decide that the timing is too tight and they prefer to drop, or students pick up activities. So the first few days of school, we saw very few kids using the high school buses. 2 or 3 kids trickling off the bus, but they'd already been to the middle school and dropped off a load of kids at the middle school age level. Parents in general have been incredibly patient, and I want to thank them for that. Not all buses arrived at school on time at the secondary level. The elementary runs were fine because the elementary runs had a lot of parents taking pictures, and we had some separation anxiety, as is very typical every year. We have a couple of buses we're watching that have certainly far under capacity in terms of the number of students assigned to that bus, but because they're bigger kids with more stuff, there's a perception that some of the buses are crowded. We're watching that closely. And we do have capacity to add 1/2 of a bus run, and I think, Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, either a morning or an afternoon in our budget. We have another bus that we haven't assigned, so we can do that, but that might require splitting 3 buses two buses into three and rerouting some stops. The time that's tightest right now, and it's hard to know whether this will hold true throughout the year, is that the 7:25 pickup for elementary students gets those students to school around 7:50 for the most part, which is when we let the bus kids go in, and then those buses turn around and do middle and high school routes. And for most of the buses, they're making it with plenty of time. A couple of buses closer to 8:30 than we'd like. The goal is always to get students there with enough time to comfortably walk to class and not a lot of time to hang around, so they can sleep, because our priority is to get them to get as much sleep as possible. It may be that we have to push back the first starts of some of the elementary routes, the very first starts, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that, to give a little more wiggle room, particularly as we get into the winter months. We're going to watch it closely and see. It really depends on usage. There are some parents, as always, who would prefer to have a stop at their home, and that's not always possible. There are some parents who think we have too many stops, and so they think their kids are, on the bus too long, or there are too many kids on the bus. I think it's important to remember that legally, bus transportation is provided as a convenience to parents, that for all students 7 through 12, we're not required to provide busing, that we do provide it as a convenience, that the fees that parents pay only cover a fraction of the costs, a small fraction of the costs, and that so we have become accustomed, because we are fee paying, to have door-to-door service for some people, and that's just not possible given the resources that we have in the bus routes that we're running. And so there are some parents who have contacted us, as they do every year, who are unhappy, and we are asking them to be patient. We're trying to address every concern. We are not able to meet everybody's request for a personal bus stop. We're not able to adjust times to be more convenient for some families. And so for some families, the convenience of a bus may not work for them. They may need to drop off. They may need to have kids walk. It may be a different choice for those families. And I just wanted to be clear about that. We are only legally required to transport K through 6 students who live more than 2 miles from school. Now, I want every child to get to school safely, and I think for some of our streets with no sidewalks, bus transportation is essential, even if it's closer than 2 miles to school. And so, but I think it's important to just remember what all the parameters are around transportation. It's a very significant budget cost for us. Just one bus is, per year is, Ellen's going to say.
1 second, I'm going to pull my spreadsheet back up.
While she's doing that, how many kids are we, or how many bus passes?
Okay. One bus is AM and PM is $62,820.
Yeah, this year. And we actually have a very favorable contract. It could be much higher. It is often much higher in other districts. How many bus passes?
We have issued 1,109. We are on target to meet where we were last year. Last year we had issued about 1,156 passes, and that was.
So some will pick up.
Yep.
So that's like a quarter of our student population?
They buy either morning or afternoon or
Right.
both passes, right?
This is all types of passes.
So that includes.
Round trip.
That's everything. That's,
Okay.
one way,
Mhm.
round trip.
So we transport a lot of kids.
Yep.
And we transport a number of students. How many buses full to after-school programs at Mystic?
So we run 4 additional buses in the afternoon, and all of our elementaries do provide some sort of service over to Mystic.
For Kids Corner and for the rec
I
program.
didn't realize it was used so heavily. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I know that asking people to be patient is difficult when we're transporting their children. And but we are, in order to make a decision about adding a bus or changing stops for a whole bunch of other families, we just want to be sure that we have a good pattern for a few days before we make those changes. And so, but I have to say, it's no more complaints than we have in a typical year. And so I know it feels, I was expecting a lot more issues because of the change in school start time. I know that people who are transporting are seeing a lot more traffic at certain parts of the morning. I would urge everyone who is choosing to drive students to leave earlier, people are leaving with the aim of getting the students there right at 8:10. 8:10 was a sort of a target for the latest time we'd want kids to get there. If you're dropping, we'd really like elementary kids to get there by 8, so they can make their way to their classrooms. And I'm still seeing students seeing that as a suggested start time at some schools, and coming later than that, and so that adds to the traffic congestion for middle and high school. It's a little bit of a domino. I think the other thing that Ellen would tell you is that she's working with the Sergeant Bachelor from the police department, who's the assigned safety officer, looking at traffic patterns, looking at alternative routes for some middle to high school drop-offs, and we'll be watching closely for students who don't have bus passes, who are riding the buses, who are taking seats.
Members of my office have been out,
Those sorts of
have
things.
already been out checking passes as well as riding a bus in the morning. So
And that's not a punitive measure, that's just, we need accurate numbers, because if we're going to add buses, we want to be sure we have legitimate pass-holding
And
students
adding
already
them in
on
the right
there.
place.
Trying to blend in on a school bus, Ellen?
Not me. However, Nancy Clark has done a wonderful job, and
She
I
does
really
great.
appreciate that.
So questions on the buses?
2 quick questions.
Yeah.
One, as far as the enforcement, I assume a kid who forgets his bus,
No,
his or her bus pass is not getting booted off.
So initially, right now, what we're doing is they're out, they're looking, they're checking, they're asking kids to have them out.
Okay.
Students that have been identified by Ms. Clark for not having passes, she's reached out to the building principals and assistant principals to see if, in reminding the student also, that you really need to have a pass, and then identifying those students to the principals to make sure that if there's some type of, extraordinary issue that we're not aware of, that, we can certainly work with the families to make sure that
That's
all
good to know.
resources, are at families' disposals.
Can I ask his question just a little differently? Do we have lists of bus pass holders
yes, we
that
do.
are circulated to the schools?
yes, we do.
So that if there's a
Yes.
dispute, it's sort of figured out on site. You either, to Brian's point, you may lose your pass, or you may actually not be on the list. That's your point,
Yeah.
right?
So what Mrs. Clark actually has done is she has gone out, and she also is taking Mrs. Kelly, who is new to the transportation office this year, and they are going out with their clipboards, with the lists, and checking the students against the lists. So if you don't have a pass, if you provide your name, you're checked off, you're good. Try and remember to have your pass, so the next time we're checking passes, it goes quicker. However, if students don't have a pass and they're not on the list, they're just making note of it, asking the student, just to follow up, with their parent or guardian about getting a bus pass if they're riding it regularly, and then forwarding that information to the principals or assistant principals in the buildings to just try and facilitate getting these things. We've received numerous emails and phone calls just in the last few days from families who have decided that they want to purchase bus passes, and were bus passes still available. So we're
Still adding.
still
I think it's
adding.
important for people to ride the bus they're assigned.
Correct.
For safety reasons. I think in the past, people have been rather loose, I'm going to a friend's house.
Right.
We need to know who's on the bus in case there's an accident, so that we can match the students to their families. And if other students are on that bus, it makes it really difficult.
Right.
And so it's more of an emergency, or an emergency contact situation.
If I could just jump in on that, those types of issues have led to some concern over being at or above capacity on certain buses on the high school McCall route last year. And then when we took a step back and reevaluated with the bus passes, we have found that there are kids that, will jump on the very first bus that's pulling out of the parking lot of the high school just to,
Explore Precinct 7.
and if they know that they can jump off at a certain,
You're
at a
close
bus
to
stop,
home.
at a bus stop that's close to wherever they may be going on that given day.
Yeah, we can't do that.
No.
It's not public transportation.
No, it's not. It's not.
Can I,
Even then, you got Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3.
just
Brian, you had another
just a
question.
quick follow-up.
Sure.
What is the capacity of a bus?
So the legal capacity
Yeah.
is different from what we consider
Either
the
one,
maximum.
or
Right,
both.
yeah. So Ellen, you have it off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I don't, and
Okay.
I don't want to even
Okay,
put it out there.
I'd love to know that at some point.
Yeah.
I will have it for you and.
We'll
probably by the
email
time
it to you.
It's on the side of the
It's on the
bus,
side of the bus.
and
Yeah.
many, many,
That's the legal
many of
capacity.
them.
Exactly.
Depends on the size of the bus.
Right,
Just
it-
curious.
It depends on the size, on the.
Size of the bus, obviously,
The
yeah.
size of the child.
Right, so we.
Does
go
it
by-
depend on the size of the child is the question?
Not the legal capacity.
No.
No, it does. It
So-
does for elementary age students versus adult age people, right? In terms of 3 to a seat versus 2 to a seat?
My understanding is the number on the side of the, when this came up a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago, the number on the side of the bus, which we consider the legal limit, is 3 kids per seat. And there's not a
People per
number.
seat. Right.
Three people.
Or adults.
Persons per
Three
seat, yes.
persons.
Thank you. So there's not an elementary number on the side of the bus, and then a big kid secondary number on the side of the bus. There's just one number. As a
Right.
practical matter, that's silly, because kids get bigger and they have instruments and all sorts of stuff, but that's.
Right, so I would say, as a general guideline, the maximum capacity is for younger children, and that we really don't expect middle and high school students to ride 3 to a seat.
No, and
We would never sell that many passes to a high school and middle school bus.
We adhere to a lower number for high school, middle
Right.
school.
That's
That's
good
fine.
to know.
Thank you.
Okay,
I will get those numbers out to you tomorrow, I just don't want.
both the
to-
legal
Okay.
ones and what we use
That'd be
as
perfect,
guidelines.
thank you.
Any other questions on buses?
Just a comment that Michelle mentioned to me earlier
Yep.
today that I thought was really important, is just to share that although I'm actually getting more complaints than I've gotten in the past. I'm glad you're getting fewer, but, Michelle made the point to me, Friday was actually the first day that we had, right? Regular
Full
day.
day,
Right,
both
first full day.
elementary and-
Because we had early release,
Right,
and some
right.
kindergartners were here one day and some weren't the
Right.
other. So it's just like Friday was really our first day.
And it's Tuesday.
And you've got commuters who come through Winchester, and they're accustomed to coming through Winchester, and now they're reacting to different traffic patterns. I know there's some families whose kids were waiting for a bus, and then actually bailed and said, this isn't working, so they jumped in a car. So to your point, I saw Ellen there on the first day of school at the high school when the buses were showing up, and I saw just a few kids dribble out. Some of those kids maybe took a car because
Right.
the bus hadn't shown up.
Right,
So
right.
it's interesting to see how the different sort of pieces of this puzzle are going to react to one another, and it clearly just may take a little bit of time.
And it's easy for me to say, relax about this, parents. But anxious children who want to get to school on time, it's not a good thing for our buses to be late. And so, for the most part, even just after 3 or 4 days, most of the buses are fine. Just a couple of buses at the high school are problematic, really, at this point. 2 buses.
I was gonna say, and I think there was a big story in the Globe even this weekend about Boston Public Schools, who didn't have a start time change this year, who said their transportation director came out and said, it's gonna be a few weeks before, it's always a few weeks before the buses get
Weeks.
settled for the year. This year's no different.
Yeah, but they had a lot more
They had a lot more
They have a
egregious
complex.
But no change, no
But
change.
no
in
change,
time.
yeah.
No change in, right.
Right.
No change in time, no change in, right.
Right.
But I guess my point is that there's always, the beginning of the school year, we struggle.
Right.
What else do you have, Judy?
A couple of other things. So MCIEA, we continue to be members of MCIEA, which is the Mass Consortium for Innovative Educational Assessment, which has as its goal to convince the state to apply for a waiver to reduce or eliminate the requirement to have MCAS testing every year at every grade in favor of assessing schools' effectiveness by a variety of measures. And so there was an article that a reporter did recently that said we were going to apply for a waiver.
Yeah.
We don't have the capacity to apply for our own waiver for
That's not
Winchester.
how it works.
That's not how it works. So I just wanted to make sure everyone got that piece. Wraparound care. So Chris Nelson and the rec department have valiantly tried to implement a new program, which is our wraparound program, which is care for half an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, as part of our agreement with the community that we are trying to provide flexible site-based care for families to support them because particularly at the elementary level because the times have changed. Lynch School is out of the picture here because Lynch has its own program already, both before and after school, and has for several years. I just wanted to give you numbers. So the numbers in the afternoon are fairly healthy except at one school. So we have 65 students enrolled in the afternoon, only 65, and only 19 students enrolled in the morning. That's across the 4 other schools. So at 2 of the schools, only 3 students are enrolled in the morning. And parents who rely on this coverage are very concerned that it's going to be eliminated. There's always the option, if an afternoon program were not to be viable, to get on the bus and go to the rec center and do care there. the afternoon.
If he has space.
If he has space, well, there's only a few students. So, so I'm hopeful that those
We're not
numbers
there
will
yet.
increase. And that what I have asked the rec department to do is, if they have fewer than, say, 5 or 6 students, that day is a loss, a financial loss for them. So we are going to try to work something out between the school department and the rec department to be sure that they don't run at a loss. But they've tried to work heroically to get the new registration up and to accommodate a wide variety of requests around this, and so we'd really like this to be successful. Our goal is to have site-based before and after-school programs at every school. Clearly, numbers like this won't support that, but there are a large number of people who are going off-site for after-school care because this only goes till 4 o'clock and they need care till 6. So over the course of the next few months, we're going to try to take a lot of data about wraparound, see if this works, and then start to survey more parents about planning for next year well in advance about whether we'll be able to run a site-based program much like Lynch at the other 4 elementary schools. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you have about wraparound, but it has caused some concern because there have been mixed messages going out about whether it'll run or not. And if you only have 1 or 2 students enrolled, it's not viable to run it. You need to have two wraparound teachers supervising, and the cost for the 2 teachers so far exceeds what the students are paying per day that it becomes not financially viable. So we need a good handful of students to sustain this. So that's where we are with that.
Chris hasn't opened up drop-in yet.
So
I think so. I'd be curious to know if drop-in is opened, if some of those numbers might increase, even if it was give us a week's notice of
Right.
when you need space. That might help boost some of those numbers for him and make it more viable
right.
for this year. I think some people may use it in that capacity.
It's hard for us to staff a drop, if it's primarily drop-in kids.
Right.
That's really hard for him to staff. He has very high requirements for his staff members. They
Right.
need 3 years' experience, they have to be CPR certified and first aid certified, and so this is not just babysitting, these are really
Right.
pretty qualified people, and they get a pretty high hourly rate. And so, yeah, I think, I'm hoping that the drop-in numbers over the course of the week will average out to be enough to
To keep it
sustain
sustainable.
two employees, yeah.
So can you clarify then, but to Michelle's point, or do these numbers are only folks who've registered for wraparound and there is no drop-in going on at these 4 schools? There's
So-
none?
No, I'm not sure that's true
You can't
yet.
even register for
You
it.
have to, it's not a registration option on the website yet, but the intent is to have a drop-in option available with sufficient notice.
And was that not part of our, forgive me, when I'm thinking back, when we talked about the change of school start time, my memory is we talked about the availability of drop-in.
Right.
I mean, they're not our employees, so we wouldn't have committed to it
Right.
stroke and verse, but
Right.
that was clearly part of the expectation, was it not?
But you need a good core program before you can do drop-in,
So-
and so he's trying to just assure that it's viable before we
So
drop in.
the reason I mention it is when the school committee actually voted to move forward with all-day kindergarten the first time, 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it took 3 years before the participation rate rose to that like steady state, which was, I'm looking at you because you were an elementary principal, it was like 85%, something like that. But it was not that in year 1. We're making, this is a significant change in this community, and a lot of people, fear the unknown, like, well, I don't know, is it any good? Are you doing it? Is she doing it? I'll do it if you do it. I mean, I just think
Kid's friend doing it?
when businesses try something new, you lose a little money at first. You got to learn, and people spread the
Yeah.
word, and you offer something valuable,
It's
and
our
people
intent to
start
open
doing it.
drop-in soon, so I'll talk to Chris about it.
Okay.
All right.
So, did you have a
Yeah,
comment?
I
Sue?
have a question. So you can you register for just one day, like
Yes.
2 weeks away?
I think you can, well, my understanding is.
I'm a little fuzzy on
Yeah.
what we're doing now and what drop-in would be.
So the difference between drop-in is, you can register, I'm gonna come Tuesdays and Thursdays all year, because
Yeah.
I know I work late those 2 days. Drop-in is, 2 days from now, I have a doctor's appointment and I need my child to stay. I didn't know, and so I'm registered in the program, but my child may only use it occasionally. There's a different fee for the drop-in rate,
Okay.
obviously a little bit higher, typically. And he will need to know how many drop-in students for 2 reasons. which is why there's got to be a 48-hour notice or
Right.
something. It can't be that day. Because you need to be sure you have sufficient staffing to keep the ratios correct.
Yep.
If all of a sudden we had 20 drop-ins on any given day,
Right. Then
you know,
just-
say there's a tennis tournament and all the parents wanted to go play in it after school or something, really fun. They might not have a staff member there to keep ratios correct, and so this is all more complicated to staff and register and monitor than I had originally thought it would be. But it's nice to have the expertise of the rec department because they've done this for years and years.
Yes,
In
it
a
is.
variety of different venues. So I trust that we will work this out, but like anything else, we'll have growing pains at first.
Can I follow up with a quick question too? So you said that 5 to 6 students is sort of the break even. Does it continue to break even at every level above that, or are there some? Do you start to actually make money? And if you make money, can we afford to have some programs losing money
Right.
if others are
Right.
making money?
Right.
You're
so
losing
that
money
we-
at one school.
Yes.
can you
Like-
Right.
The whole program.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the difficulty is adding staff during the year after the program has already started is more challenging, making sure they're adequately trained. But yes, I think the problem is if you only have 3 students registered say at Ambrose School, which is the lowest, Ambrose has the lowest number, only has 9 total people registered for wraparound. If you have 3 registered, but on any given day, nobody's coming, then you're paying 2 people,
Yeah.
and that's a big loss. And so we've got to sort of figure all of this out. And so what the signal that I'm trying to send is that, I may be coming to you saying, they're having a significant loss in this program, we need to find some money in our budget to support it a little bit, just as seed money, so that I can convince the rec department to continue to run it. And so that's they often advertise programs and then don't run them because of enrollment. And so that's just part of their gig. But for this, parents are counting on this, or some parents are counting on this.
Yes.
But if all year only 2 students are using it, it doesn't seem reasonable to say that program is viable. How many months do we need to run it before we figure out whether it's viable? That's going to be the sort of tipping point. And my hope is that we'll go at least half a year before we
I was
reassess.
going to say, can we kind of get some sense from the rec department that they will run it for a half a year before they
Right, because if
start
they don't
saying-
run it, we'll have to run it ourselves. And so that's another,
Because we made that
That
commitment.
opens
we made
up
the
other
commitment, right,
issues.
yeah.
Well, I would just say, before we get to the point of talking about helping them out financially, I would look to my friend to the right and ask if it was a one-time seed money request, might that even fall under reserve fund transfer discussion with FinCom, so it doesn't hit our budget? Every
It's
one
not
of our
gonna be-
dollars
yeah.
is spoken for.
It's not going to be big money.
Even
not
if it's
bad.
$1,000,
Yeah.
it's $1,000 we're not spending on other stuff.
So
Remember-
we really want this to work because we told the community we would try to do
You
it.
did.
So
This work.
there's got to be all
We
right,
just need them to sign up.
we need people to
And
sign
they will
up,
make it work.
and they will make it work.
But they have to be able to trust it before they will sign up.
Right,
So
right. So we'll make it work.
you gotta.
Couple of other quick things. There's going to be a presentation by our incident management team for all parents, a school safety presentation at 7 p.m. at the high school on September 26th.
Okay.
And so that'll be sort of a general, here's what we're doing to prepare for critical incidents, here's the kind of trainings we do, here's what Alice is, all of those things.
District-wide, not just focused on the
District-wide.
high school.
District-wide.
Did you say it's 7?
It's at 7 p.m., high school, 26th of September. My next superintendent's chat is before our next school committee meeting, 6:15 in this room, 9:25, that is September 25th. If anyone would like to come and chat about things happening in the district, not individual children and their needs, because that's more confidential, but sort of general things.
Can I ask a question? Can Frida send out a newsletter, like request to newsletters to put that in? Because I usually put it into the Lynch one.
Yeah, we just got the date confirmed for the supers chat or for the IMT presentation.
We know that, but
Mhm.
I already put that in the newsletter. It's the superintendent's chat. I like to add to our newsletter.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. I did send out a direct mail to all parents to tell them about it, but it's kind of buried in a few bulleted thing. McCall, I forgot to tell you this, and I don't have the date here, but I will let you know. At 5 p.m. before the McCall open house, the principal is inviting people to come and look at the 3 new classrooms in the courtyard space if they wish. Remember, we said the community funded this. We want to have, so it makes sense to kind of do it when lots of parents might be coming. They might come early and come have a look at it.
It's
Or-
October 4th, I believe.
Thank you very much, October 4th. And,
So that's specifically for parents who are coming for open house.
Parents or
right?
community members.
So my only reaction is, knowing how we've done this in the past, I wonder if we should, before we open it up to the full community, have the connector done. So the project is actually done.
Done.
Because I would imagine if we did it before, that might draw a different reaction.
There might be a few questions.
Yeah.
So, do you
agree.
want us to postpone this? Let's, before I announce it publicly, let me,
Yeah.
before I confirm the date, let me go back and see what the estimated day for the
I
connector.
mean,
would be
for
this
parents coming for open house, there's a neat story to tell. Some of them are going to be there, right? We had
Right.
teachers in those rooms anyway. But when we've done this in the past, we've kind of waited until like even it was October, it was all done. It was like a Saturday or a Sunday thing that we opened it up.
Okay,
Thank you. Anything else?
that's it. Sorry that was such a long list, but with the opening of school,
Good
there's a lot
stuff.
going on.
Future agenda items, we have a report on MCAS testing and accountability changes for the school year, technology plan update, eventually a lacrosse wall. And I just wrote down, where was my note? Will we revisit district goals based on
Yes.
your input from leadership and meeting tonight?
Yep.
Okay. And does anybody else have any other thoughts on future agenda items? I thought there was
Superintendent's goals.
superintendent's goals, thank you. I guess that was
I
it.
have one.
Yes, please.
EFPBC appointments. We spoke earlier this afternoon, and I
Yep.
remembered that there's a joint appointment by school committee and select board of a registered architect that we
Mhm.
have to do. And also, it's cloudy in my mind when I was appointed to the EFPBC, and I think it's a 3-year appointment, so I'm pretty sure we need to revote that.
We can just check with Mary Ellen, right? She would know.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
although the chair of the EFPBC has asked, so, like,
Has asked you if you're legal?
yeah.
Great.
And I don't really know. It's like, do I have to go research that? Maybe I should ask Mary
Are
Ellen.
you a
but-
registered architect by any chance?
Unfortunately, no. I know
So
a few, though.
so this reminds me, the other thing I wanted to put on our list for future agenda items is
Oops,
the
okay.
Lynch, so senior study, Lynch, and MSBA. So they're going to be coming here. There's some work we have to do in advance. Maybe this could be just like we had with the high school as a regular reporting item, this may be something to regularly have on the agenda, on some evenings, just a report. Certainly nothing to vote, but
Yep.
some things will start to happen pretty quickly. And Michelle is asked to join us in those meetings with their senior study team, and she will do so. So, they haven't yet sent their questions in, have they? Do you know, Ellen?
They're not sending questions.
They
So
don't
there was
send
some,
questions.
there was some
And it's a small
there was some
group that's-
pre-visit work I thought that needed to be
There were
done
just
before they
some
come.
information
Okay.
that they would like at the table.
Just they just want site plans, that's it.
Okay, good. So, that's coming. And the other item we should just have also on the future agenda is just long-term budget planning. Maybe another update. We've had a couple of sessions since we last talked about it. Right?
Yeah, the other thing that occurs to me is I think that we typically have some kind of report from guidance about college acceptances and matriculation and
Yep.
that stuff that Suzanne Onso does
Guidance
a
and
good
testing
job.
report.
It feels to me like she was here like 3 months ago, and if it was a year, I'm just,
Yeah.
time's
yeah.
really flying, but, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, next meeting date's 25th and October 9th. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
the
Thanks
leadership
for,
dinner.
thank you, Lori.
Oh, yeah, that was
Thanks for, that was good conversation tonight.
Guys.
Just saw the email that
I
you sent me.
slaved over a hot pizza
You
stove.
did, you did.
I know.
You were true to your word.